everybody, and welcome. This is Lessons for Full Spectrum Humans. I am Aurora, and it is Christmas Day. It's Christmas Day. And so this is not our regular class. I actually wasn't sure if we would have our regular class. And literally in the middle of the night last night, I decided we're going to have Christmas class. Okay. So this is not the usual curriculum. I didn't want so many students because I figured almost everybody has family commitments and other holiday themed activities that they will be doing today. I didn't want a lot of people to miss out on things by going into the regular curriculum, but I would definitely like to be able to speak about important thematic, sharings that would be relevant to your life for right now, not just merely the regular generalized information that I give in the curriculum that I developed over the past 10 years, because there's a lot going on in terms of I would like to simply say spiritual attainment, but really in like a giant spiritual battle that has been ongoing for a long time, but that is very intense right now. So I didn't want to miss today. I didn't want to share things that are going to leave people in the dust because they would miss class, but I also want to make good use of this time. So thank you to anyone who is able to be here live. And thank you to the people that are able to catch this in the archive too. And I also, of course, spend time thinking about and considering what I want to speak about each week. Often I go over my notes, like I'm trying to say in this very convoluted way, what I usually prepare. And so I was thinking about what are some of the things that would be relevant to having a class on Christmas, because I have two separate regular curriculum classes. That one is called Non-Religious Christ Consciousness, and one is also about the Christian religion. And I'm going to go into both topics that are from both of those, but I also really want to talk about what is most relevant to us right now in this moment, because we are having to completely redefine the afterlife. So just be aware, like I'm going to be totally blasphemous and socially incorrect and religiously inflammatory, touch every sacred cow, and say a lot of things that might not be acceptable to orthodoxy, especially Christian church orthodoxy stuff. But I got to do it. And also, if you're wondering, like I know I usually wear a little cross, my necklace broke, and that's why I have to fix it. It's because it's been rubbing against this larger metal necklace for a long time. So I don't want anybody to read in, be like, what's going on with Aurora? What's her political statement here, taking off that necklace? It broke. I need to fix it. And I've been very, very busy. Okay, so hi and welcome. I'm glad that people are able to be here. First, let's give like an energetic weather report of what is going on right now. Not to be inflammatory in any way, but the Pope in Rome, Pope of the Catholic Church in Rome, has been doing this ongoing ritual for the past several days that is called opening of these different portals. And it is part of what the church describes as a Jubilee year. And I do not want to have extra energy go to the activities or extra validation go to those activities, or any of your energy to be harvested in the style of Lush or anything like that. I don't want to bring up extra fear, anxiety, or any kind of things like that. I want you to be informed about what these things were. So, of course, I have a team of psychic warriors, and we have already been working on protecting the world from any kind of negative ritual that was involved in these opening of portals. And we did that work several weeks ago. And these are all wonderful, brave, like highly trained people that I work with. So, shout out and recognition goes to them. But even as I work with groups, I also work constantly all the time as an individual. That's what I do with all of my lasagna energy. Yeah. And especially for the past 5 years, I have not simply had regular mental activities as I had for about the first 18 years of my experience of being here. I have been almost 100%, 24 hours a day, always fighting against these forces of darkness and evil and negativity, and largely due to the technological synthetic telepathy, because my mind they're touching on my mind. It's not even just that they're in the world with me and I'm a telepath and I'm an empath and I'm able to sense what's going on. I'm like, oh, something smells bad. Something bad is going on over there. They have been directly touching my mind. So this has been a very, very incredibly difficult time in my existence in being here, and it was unanticipated. And also you can consider this to be an Ask Me Anything Q&A. So for students who are here in the classroom at the moment, if you would like to, ask questions in the chat, I'll be very responsive to you, because I wanted this to be an informal and not structured lecture the way that I usually do things, and where I have various different salient points that I want to get through. So today I do really want to respond to you. So if you have questions, please, you can ask me all about it. But people often ask me in these, casual question sessions, did you know, coming here as a walk-in, did you know that it would be like this? And I'm like, no, actually, I didn't know it would be like this. I didn't know how difficult even just regular existence would be. And that's Cheeky over there, and she's doing great. Actually, she's doing a lot better, improving on her medicines, and she was just drinking her little water and having her little snack. So I'm happy to report that she's doing much better. But no, I did not anticipate how difficult this assignment would be when I self-assigned and chose to come in here by creating the Flying Rainbow Lasagna portal and transforming my body, which is now my body. I used to always say this body, but transforming what is now my body over the past 25 or so years. And a lot of the work that I thought that I would be doing would be what I customarily do, which is to influence culture and influence mind states and consciousness and evolution through art and music and beauty and dance. And I also have done a lot of work throughout my career in the cosmic infrastructure as Aurora, as a waveform impulse, not as an embodiment in a human female body here, but going around and dealing with different AIs. And so that I did not anticipate that I would have to do so much in terms of preventing and protecting this planet, preventing the negative blowback from harmful AI, and protecting this planet from the negative agenda of transhumanism that is going on. You're like, okay, Aurora, this is pretty much what you're usually talking about in class, but how does this relate to like Christmas, Christianity? Will you play the Snoopy theme song? Because we love that Christmas album. What does this have to do with any of these things? And I'll get there. We have to completely recalibrate our expectation of afterlife, of deity, of what is correct, especially in this moment, in this generation. So just think of it in the kindest terms. The things that were appropriate for previous generations are not appropriate in this generation, not only because you now have an option in terms of the Flying Rainbow Lasagna, where you can transform genetically and transcend the necessity of a mortality event in order to reach your spiritual attainment, but for many other reasons as well. Why you're having to recalibrate away from an expectation of being a good person in life, dying, and then going into a reward afterlife. So there were a couple of lessons that I looked over today in preparing for class. One of them is called How to Die Well. It's lesson 6.2. One of them is, so there's also non-religious Christ consciousness. That's talking about what I did even a couple of weeks ago, talking about the relationship between your indigo chakra, energy center, pineal gland here, and your crown chakra, which is represented by like the top of your head, like a ballerina, but also really the center of the nucleus of every cell of your body, where you've got your DNA, which is really your divine connection, and the interplay and beautiful relationship between those two aspects of self. And that some of what I said in that class might be considered just completely, clutch my pearls, blasphemous to those who are highly indoctrinated in the church, because of some of the spiritual hierarchy that is inherent in the dogmatic teachings. I am, of course, not an adherent or a proponent of those dogmatic teachings. This is why I'm telling you, like, strap yourselves in. I will poke every sacred cow, because it needs to happen, because there needs to be a cultural reassessment of the validity of some of these assertions, especially in light of Flying Rainbow Lasagna. One of them is the assertion when, the religious figure of Jesus Christ. We have to make many distinctions here between the religious figure of Jesus Christ, the historical figure of a teacher who is here in embodiment form, and the actual spirit of Christ, which I will define all of these things for you as to who and what they are, but that one of them in dogma would declare that there's only one pathway to return to God's self-remembrance, and to get home and to get back to the source. And that is through the acceptance and celebration of that particular person, the acceptance of them as deity, as living embodied deity, and that they will wave their magic wand and poof, declare you good enough to go back home. And I have to blow this completely out of the water because it's all really, really, really wrong. Okay. So I'm happy to do so, but let's do it in like a nice, fun, Christmassy type of way, because even the conception of what is heaven is very, very erroneous. I hope that this won't be laborious or tiresome for you to be able to listen to, because, of course, in my group of warriors, we've been doing a lot of work against the figure that I call false astral Jesus. And I will warn everyone very much against this imposter who is not deity, who is nothing even close to deity, and who has been incredibly destructive and corrosive in its influence of humanity. And I will even go further to say that I feel both of the representatives, both false astral Jesus, the representative of supposed goodness, and also Satan or Lucifer, I consider these both to be egregores or egregores. I don't know how to pronounce that word, but that word egregore is an esoteric term for an externalized composite consciousness that is created from the belief systems and emotional energy of the believers. That a group of people get together and lend their emotional energy to the genesis and sustenance of something that is purely a thought form, and that the thought form then takes on a life of its own and can even seem to express some of its own levels of motivations and empowerments in the world. But really, it is doing and expressing the things that the believers don't feel empowered enough to express on their own. Okay. And when I say both the positive version or vision of what Jesus is, and the negative, and this is all the duality that I talked about in our class about duality and perception, the negative of satanic Luciferian, that these both represent crappiness. Like, did you just call my God crappy? Not your satanic God, but your Christian God. I'm like, yes, I did. I told you, strap yourselves in, get ready, okay? Blasphemy, go. Because the current structure of what is presented to you goes something like this. Here's a bunch of really, really evil, horrible, twisted, grotesque demons, and they're very mean and bad, and they're very scary. And they're doing all sorts of naughty things in the world and causing murder and death and disease and distress, violations, rape, all these bad things that we don't want to have here. And then you might say, well, where is the good? Where are the good guys? Where's good Jesus? And why is he letting this happen? And all of these things. And there's huge theological contortions about why there is not an intervention. And this relates absolutely to the present level of expectation of there were those weird subcutaneous pollutions that have been going on that certainly seem to be against Christ and against direct divine connection. And how could Christ allow those things to happen? How could Jesus allow those things to happen? And then the sense of an excuse being made, an expectation excuse. I'm sure that he wasn't able to intervene. The sun in the sky, I'm pointing out the window that's shining in the sky. Why didn't the sun let off a giant burst of energy and fry all of this malware? Why didn't somebody fly down and wave a magic wand and stop it from happening? Why all these different things? Why did it happen? So there is a apparent empowerment imbalance, where the dark side of evil and grossness and wankiness exhibits itself to be super empowered, even though I'm telling you, things that are disconnected from divinity are not powerful at all. And when I'm talking about divinity, you're very, very clear with me here. I am not talking about an anthropomorphic or humanoid God at all. I'm talking about an abstract force. And the abstract force is a generative force field that is what creates and sustains reality. It really creates and sustains and generates reality in the moment. Your path to God's self-remembrance is also a path of intellectual comprehension of what people here call quantum observership. The sense that you being in the world and your consciousness interacting with potentials creates the world. So instead of the ancient linear model of world creation being a long, long time ago, there was a big bang and it banged. And then out of that bang came everythingness, or the biblical, wait, let me put down my pen, the biblical conception of the genesis of the world, literally from the book of Genesis, that said, in the beginning, God created this stuff, and then here's stuff. But I am here to tell you that those are both allegories at best, and that they've been taken into a really, really distorted and disempowering literalism, because what is happening is in each moment, you as observer are creating and generating the world. And you are doing it in partnership with an aspect of yourself that is God, that is divinity, that is divine potential. And you keep on creating stuff and creating stuff and creating stuff in each moment. And that distinction is very relevant to what we are calling the ascension process. Because in ascension, what happens is you accelerate to light speed and beyond, and you become hyper aware of your true nature as pure light, and how your consciousness, which is a phenomenon and an inexplicable miracle of consciousness and of self-awareness, and your observership creates and generates events in each moment. And it's a total switch in the dynamic of empowerment, because instead of saying some external God external to me sat on a mountaintop, waved its magic wand, and poof, created the world. And then, like, don't ask me, I just work here. Like, that guy created stuff. And if there's bad stuff, blame that guy up there. But switching to, I just created all this stuff. If there's bad stuff, maybe I have an influence and I have an area of responsibility. And how can I then change what I'm doing in order to change and shift reality? And that is what ascension is. It is moving away from the linear model of ancient creation into the creation in each moment, moving away from the externalized deity, that some man out there that makes stuff happen, and then when bad stuff happens, blame that guy, not me, not my fault. And moving towards instead self-responsibility, but also you don't have to take responsibility for things that you have not created and generated, as we have talked about in this class quite a lot, the sense that there are some inexplicable things that are actually no thing. They're nothing, and they don't exist. They unexist. They unbe. And that they are aberrations that don't actually exist in the world, and that somehow we are in a world experiencing things that should never be, events that should never be, characteristics or consciousnesses or the evidence of some kind of organism that should never be. And we're kind of like, this stuff should never be. Like, how can I even have to deal with it? But somehow it's here, because I went through this whole question convolutions and labyrinth when I first came here as Aurora. I'm like, well, technically all of these things are not possible, but they're here. And then at a certain point, you have to stop asking questions, because you're like, you just got to hit the ground running. Be like, okay, this stuff is here. You have to deal with it. So I want you to have all of the empowerment tools that you need. One of them is the concept that you don't have to be responsible for something in order to respond to it. All right, let's say you have a roommate. Your roommate left a bunch of dirty socks on the living room floor, and they're not your socks, and you didn't behaviorally do that, and you didn't create them with your observership. Your roommate behaviorally created them and sustained them with their observership. It ain't your fault. It's that guy's fault. And you can either be like unhappy at your roommate, or you can say, even though I did not create this, I am not responsible for it, I can respond to it. And I can pick up the dirty socks and I can do something about it. Or I can talk to the roommate and say, stop putting your dirty socks around here, okay? So evil is dirty socks. I didn't create these dirty socks. I didn't generate them, and they were here when I got here. It was like that when I got here, all right? But that's not an excuse. Like when you're a new employee, you can get away with a lot and be like, that's not my fault. It was like that when I got here. But I've been here for over 20 years. And so what I do now is I say, how can I respond to these unfair situations and totally unimaginable circumstances that I didn't create or generate, but they're here. And so I got to do something about them. And that is the essence of what Flying Rainbow Lasagna is. Because I'm giving you all the empowerment tools. So you can generate solutions to the problems and inadequacies and imbalances and unfairnesses that are here through Flying Rainbow Lasagna and through your own ability to rectify the time field and things to take away characteristics and events that should not be here. I had to learn as people start to do Flying Rainbow Lasagna that there are all of these inner genetic limitations and splicings that are very similar to when an animal is neutered. Humanity as it presently exists has been genetically neutered. And that is what humans do to domesticated animals to take away either their sex organs or aspects of like their claws or their teeth or something like that, so that they're not as dangerous. And so this is one of the healings that I can bring to you in your mind, because a large proportion of humanity has been neutered. Pardon me. I have wonderful, this is papaya with ginger juice here. Some, but not all. Some, you know, that's a math word. Some, but not all of you have been neutered. Because when you look around, there's definitely at least two classes in this society, the predator class and the prey class, right? The predators, who are the perpetrators of enormous amounts of violence and exploitation, apologies, and the predators are the violators. They're violators of human boundaries. They're violators of sexual boundaries. They're also violators of genetic boundaries. And that is really a lot of my criticism of this type of technology, is that it is highly illegal in terms of cosmic law in its violation of free will. Okay. And also that same predator class of humanity, I struggle even to say the word humanity, but of the people who are here in this world right now, they are not neutered. They are violent. They are clearly violent a-holes who have no problem, no qualms whatsoever about creating weapons, using physical violence, using psychosocial violence, which is what propaganda is, which is lies and false light, and no qualms against, again, the violation of boundaries. One of the huge distinctions I make with myself in being here as a cosmic visitor, for lack of a better word, is that I respect boundaries and I respect the individual's right to freedom. So in coming here, I do not force the Flying Rainbow Lasagna upon you or require that you must conform to Flying Rainbow Lasagna, or to have a 100% conformity rate to Flying Rainbow Lasagna, or to somehow lasagna you against your will. I have always been very, very clear about that. And this is to make a big distinction in you, in your journey of consciousness. Like, you guys need to be able to calibrate to who is a safe adult. Like if you're a child, and I'm not infantilizing you by saying that you are like childlike in your levels of development in some of this spiritual esoteric truth. If you are a human biological child and you have only ever been surrounded by unsafe adults who either took things from you without your permission or touched you in ways that were inappropriate or told you things that weren't truthful or exploited you in some way, like whatever made you work at the oyster shucking factory when you were only 4 years old, or any of those types of things, you might never have calibrated to who or what is a safe adult. What does an adult actually act like? You might presume that all adults are only interested in making you work, touching your body, or, taking something from you, and that you exist at their convenience. And then to be able to find a safe adult is someone who like protects you, respect your boundaries, even as a child, because even children are allowed to be able to say no, like, no, I don't like that. No, I don't want to do that. Or no, don't touch me in that way. And also, those are just the basics of human rights, or biological organism rights. But then also, a safe adult gives to you, doesn't exploit you and just take from you, but gives to you and helps you to grow into your greatness. Okay. That's who I am. That is who and what Aurora is. When I speak about myself in the third person, I'm talking about the larger force of protection that is here around this planet. If I were not here on this planet, in this world right now, as I am, you guys wouldn't have a snowball's chance. You wouldn't have enough consciousness freedom to even think about whether your mind is free or what you need to learn about or know about in order to become free. And this is, I talk about ancient concurrent Atlantis. This is exactly the peril that ancient concurrent Atlantis faced or faces in this moment. An influx of technology that was so all pervasive and inescapable that it took over people's minds and they could not even think the thought, am I thinking my own thought or something else thinking this thought for me? And that is the death of soul. And we're going to go into death of soul a lot when we talk about religious concerns and Christianity. But basically, when your free will is violated, you lose your soul. When you give up your free will of your own volition, you kill your own soul. Because soul is the consciousness journey that is made through choice, moving through the variety of potential choices and nodes, like connective time road nodes in the fabric of space-time. Your soul is a shape. And the shape is, you could envision it kind of like a pathway on a map, you know, where your car went. Like you started out over here and then you drove over here and then you drove over here and drove over here and made circles over here and then came over here and then finally came over here. And that's your soul. And everybody has a unique trajectory in moving through time. And that is part of what makes your soul so special, that your consciousness emerged into reality and had these various different travels and experiences that are completely unique to that particular path. And this is totally direct analogy to the path of photon, a particle of light or an aspect of the waveform continuum of light that went on its own unique journey and is still part of the rest of the fabric of light, but is completely unique as an individual. And photons make choices and you make choices too. You're driving your car and you're choosing about, like, do you want to drive north or south? And do you want to make a rest stop, or how fast do you want to drive? These are all inner choices and they represent your soul. And when you abdicate those choices, then you lose your soul. So let's say you have a GPS that tells you turn right here, turn left here, as many of us do, then that represents some loss of soul, especially if it's about life choices. So driving down the road, don't worry, you're not going to lose your soul if you listen to your GPS because you're in a strange place and you don't know which direction to drive. But I'm trying to say, like, the slippery slope of using your cell phone to guide you every place, it is training wheels for what it's like to become a complete transhumanist, which is when you abdicate your own inner directives in favor of the directives that come from a set of machinery or whatever, technological tools or digital presences. And that is not only not healthy and not good, it is the loss of something that is a real treasure. That is incredibly important. But you can also lose your soul if you abdicate to a seemingly benevolent entity that will then inhabit you and control your life. And I think that that's one of the most corrosive and worthy of criticism assertions of Christianity as a dogma. The sense that on an esoteric level, Jesus Christ is a man being who is also living in you and through you. And I have to make a distinction because Christ is a meta being. Meta means overarching, like an umbrella. Christ is a being that is comprised of many, many facets of individual consciousness that all comprise a holistic view of the world from the combined viewpoints of many first-person experiencers. And all of those combined viewpoints or souls or journeys are important, valid. They don't fight for supremacy. This is not a pyramid-shaped hierarchy where there's only one king at the top and everybody else is chopped liver at the bottom. or whatever you can say, you get peed and pooped upon at the bottom, and only one guy is up at the top, and he's okay. But that is how the religion is structured, and that also relates to human neurology deriving from primate neurology, and you call it the monkey mind, and it's because this is how primates act in a natural setting, and that has to do with their community and ways that they have figured out in order to survive more effectively. Like one head monkey is going to say, let's go over here and eat bananas over here. And everyone else is going to be like, okay, we listen to you because you know where the bananas are, right? But then sometimes there are struggles for supremacy where someone says, I'm not going to listen to you. I'm going to go over here and find my own bananas. And then everybody in the tribe fights. This is literally what happens in the animal world. And that animal tendency has been translated in an unhealthy way into human social dynamics and human the hierarchy of power dynamics in your world, meaning government and also to some extent like corporations and other pyramid-shaped hierarchies. But Christ is not a pyramid-shaped hierarchy. So just huge emphasis here. Christ is very real. As I'm in this conversation, being very critical of dogma, illusions, unhealthy egregores, and other forms of behavioral control mechanisms that disempower you and neuter you. There's a very, very real Christ. I know because I'm from there. All right. And none of just to take my presentation here today, not as originating in any way from self-aggrandizement. So please know that I'm just going to come here and just share the flat out truth and that I don't have any agenda behind it in terms of personal self-aggrandizement. In fact, my agenda is to have a lateral hierarchy, not this pyramid-shaped hierarchy. So I'm not here to simply place myself at the top or the epicenter of all of this, but to be able to redefine what is going on so that you don't expect and require a pinnacle or an epicenter in order to guide your life. But that has been the abdication where you're like, I'm just a lowly nothing. I'm going to let the pinnacle epicenter guide my life because that's all that I am. And what really happens in the strongest system is each person has their own innate connection to what is the epicenter. The epicenter is centered inside of each one of you as an individual, and it is the same epicenter. That epicenter is singularity. I'm looking around because my sculpture is always in the wrong place, and I always have to jump in order to get it. Because you know why? It's delicate. It's delicate, and I put it away for safekeeping, and then I forget to get it on class day. But yes, the epicenter that I'm talking about is singularity. That is that convergence point. And clearly, it's in the chakra system that's on all of us, and in every cell and in every atom and in every dog. And so you have epicenter inside of my dog. You have epicenter inside of this houseplant. You have epicenter inside of the sun. You have epicenter inside of a single atom or a single molecule. And when I contextualize it like that, then you can't just be shaking your fist at the sun, like the guy in the sky or the giant ball of consciousness that's in the sky. Be like, it's your fault. I blame you, because the epicenter is contained within everything. And this also is moving beyond blame, shame, cosmic complaints departments, and other things like that. Because sometimes it's easier when you've just got one boss because you blame the boss. Like, it ain't my fault. I blame that guy upstairs. And that's also another way of losing soul, of stepping away from your personal power and responsibility in order to say that there's one person or boss who is responsible, and it ain't you. And in that person is the person who is effing up in the world. So, and you can also understand if you wanted the world to be effed up, this is the type of story that you would tell to people. You would say, you are not powerful in your own right at all. Someone else is powerful. And if you want to get something done, you're going to need permission from that someone else, or to supplicate yourself to that someone else. And also, some people think that it is being a good person to open yourself up to being completely ruled and guided by that someone else. And people who are on their spiritual journey are fragile. I don't want to break you into a million pieces. If you're going through this journey of learning about who was Jesus, who or what is Christ, Who are you and what should you be? I want you to know I am non-judgmental and I am celebratory. I want you to move through these chapters. Don't get stuck in the form. So like, just like when you're a little tiny child, everybody moves through levels of maturity. You go through like your anal expulsive phase. I talk about that a lot. That's when kids crayon on everything. They are externalizing their internal stuff through drawing on the couch, drawing on the walls, drawing on all these things. It's not okay to be stuck in that phase, but it's okay to go through that phase. It's usually around 2 or 3 years old. Again, I don't have my own children. I have been a childcare worker and helped others in raising their own children and learned a lot about this from direct experience. You don't get stuck. Hopefully, you grow and evolve, and then you have other layers of wisdom that mitigate those original desires so that you don't always just act on your impulses and explode your emotions everywhere, because toddlers also are famous for having tantrums. They explode their emotions everywhere, right? So, but it doesn't mean that you get rid of your emotions. What does it mean? When you mature, what does it mean? It means that you learn how to express your emotions, learn when to express them, learn about the origins of your emotions, learn to channel them positively into socially constructive behaviors. Like, this is good, all right? So when you're on your journey of learning about what is Christ and who are you and what is going on in the world, it's not good to be stuck in the form of saying, like, I'm a lowly nothing and something else live within me and live through me because it gives me value, because otherwise I am worthless. But I recognize that is I don't agree with it, but that it's a stage of growth that people often go through. And then they come out the other side, hopefully, into levels of empowerment. But I have huge qualms against even going through that stage, because it's hard to get your hands back on the steering wheel once you relinquish your power. And the religion that you presently have, like today is Christmas, everybody's celebrating this particular Christmas religion. It ain't healthy, kid, because a lot of it has to do with celebrating everybody relinquishing their power to this personified deity and then not reclaiming their power. That is considered to be what it is to be a good Christian in many churches, where you are having a esoteric rapport with a spiritual entity that you invite to live in you and in your body and through you, and even make decisions for you and even tell you what to do. And some people take it quite literally. Jesus, take the wheel. And they even let their hands off of the steering wheel of the car. This one lady did that. He said, why'd you crash into that? She's like, I said, Jesus, take the wheel. And I took my hands off the wheel. So don't be literal. Don't be stuck in the form. At best, these are allegories, but don't lose your soul because you step away from the empowerment of your life. That all is really unhealthy. And that's something that is a stage that humanity has gone through for thousands of years. And it's time for that stage of development to be over and to come into a different level of development where you take control over your life. So a lot of my criticism of the Christian religion also has to do with the sense of behavioral control, breaking people's personalities and their ego structures down to the point of feeling like they have nothing in their life and they are so desperate that then they will reach out for help and say, somebody help me, save me, fix me. And then this entity will come along and will say, okay, now I will help you, save you, fix you. But this is, again, egregore of crappiness. It's this whole convolution of like, well, you have to get down to rock bottom, then finally say, come inside of me, and then it comes inside of you, and then it lifts you up. Like, none of that is good. None of that is good at all. In fact, you should not have to reach rock bottom in any way, and you should not have to experience total degradation in order then to have total elevation. I propose to you that many people would not go into levels of rock bottom degradation if the world were structured the way it is actually supposed to be. You would simply be on your internal and emotional journey, learning about what is happening in your life without having to lose yourself profoundly and go to the depths of what is considered poor behavior in this world. And poor behavior could be profound substance abuse, abusing others with violence, sexually abusing others, or doing things that are out of balance in your community. And I'm using nice language for that. There is a whole segment of your world that is satanic, where basically their religion is to do things that are bad and to go not only to rock bottom, but below rock bottom. And they're constantly digging the rock bottom even lower and lower and lower and lower. So these two belief systems and viewpoints complement each other. And they both need to be disentangled from your consciousness and thrown out the effing window, because neither of them serve. And in the world of duality, you can't really have like the dizzying heights without the perilous lows. And all of that is not healthy. And it also is a level of duality that, again, I could validate it as being a necessary stage that you grow through, getting to this level here of duality, and then moving beyond that as you find abstraction and divine connection, and you move into a more multi-shaded, subtle perception of reality beyond mere black and white. So duality is black and white with hard edges, but the multi-shaded subtleties of real multidimensional existence shows you that there are multiple hues or colors, multiple shades, multiple layers, but also it's not open for interpretation, because I think that's also big. In the world of duality, it's interesting because there's hard edges and good versus evil, light versus dark, and this versus this, and that's the way it is. But also that is the level of anthropocentrism, where people negotiate about everything philosophically. Like, what is right? Is it right to do this? Is it right to do this? And I've told you in this class that there's not a one-size-fits-all recipe for what is right. The answer for what is right is not consistent across all species, individuals, and cultures. It is a completely customized set of behaviors that cannot be prescribed by someone else or imposed by an external authority figure. And that's the strong point of what I teach with Flying Rainbow Lasagna, is that it is unique to each individual. It is not imposed by me as an external authority figure. Far from it. It is your individual and unique journey. It's like being an artist. When I make my artwork, there is not like a central art authority that is like, you are allowed to use the color orange. We, sanctify the color orange. You're allowed to use this color. You're not allowed to use this color. No, like actually the reason why I became a visual artist in this world to share my message with the world is because it's one of the few places where there are very few rules. There are not rules about what you are and aren't allowed to do, and you don't need peer review and the clapping of other people to be like, yes, you're allowed to paint that painting. Like, you just make it look the way you want it to look. That is artistic freedom. And in your life, you're the masterpiece. Your body is your masterpiece. Your soul trajectory is your masterpiece. And what you are doing is hopefully uncompromisingly expressing your own vision of what you know your painting should look like, or what you want your life to look like, or more importantly, who you want to be as a person. This is the big stuff, because everybody, I don't want to say everybody, it's too loose language, got too casual, but many people here are looking for acceptance and celebration to the point that they're willing to lose themselves, completely change their appearance, completely redefine themselves to be acceptable in the eyes of the deity who is known as Jesus. And again, I'm on this Jesus kick because we're talking about Christmas time and, the reason for the season and all these different things here. People here are so degraded that they will do anything for approval. And that is the hallmark of being a broken spirit. When someone breaks your spirit so much that you feel so badly about yourself that you're like, just tell me what to do and I'll do it for you. Just tell me that I'm good. That is tragic. I am speaking to you now from my perspective as a higher dimensional otherworldly waveform. And as that level of organism, I have a huge perspective, and I've seen and experienced a lot. And I will tell you that what I see in this world, in the relationship between many individuals in their self state and their relationship with deity, is tragic. Because I'm like, wow, they got broken really, really bad to the point that they are now like on their knees and they're saying, I'll do anything you want. I'll be anything you want. Just love and accept me. It's so disheartening because that's not what life is supposed to be like. And also because I told you, again, not from purely self-aggrandizement, but I'm like, I know Christ. I come from that level of being. And none of it is about being so broken and feeling so bad about yourself that you'll do anything to be able to get into the club. That is completely, that's all human, primate, hierarchical, monkey mind behavioral control stuff that's in your world right now. And it's not even just cultural impositions, it is even genetic splicing. When you start to do flying rainbow lasagna, you are healing your body and returning your genetic behavior and patterning to the state of pure freedom, which is who and what you're really supposed to be. And I'm giving you these in hints because you will come upon these walls where something will try to say, like, who do you think you are? And as you're healing yourself and as you're changing into the form that you're actually supposed to look like, it will try to make you revert back to your previous form. And that previous form is a disempowered form that is meant to be domesticated or enslaved or disempowered. And so from that perspective, the figure of Jesus and the figure and the teachings and dogma of the religious church, they are all about diminishing you, behaviorally controlling you, and keeping you in a disempowered state. And so this is why we have to have this big conversation about as you become free, you're going to have to jettison a lot of baggage. You're going to have to completely redefine your definition of religion, your definition of Christ, your relationship with Christ, and also your relationship with afterlife, because afterlife technically shouldn't even exist. Afterlife is what happens when you hit the membrane of death because you went in the wrong direction. It is the big giant road sign that's like, you did something wrong. But in this world, afterlife is presented as your reward for being a good person in life. Death is presented as an inevitability, and afterlife is presented as your reward. And if you do the things and jump through the hoops as a broken spirit to be able to find acceptance by deity, who is the gatekeeper, literally, to be able to go into this particular level of supposed paradise and reward, then you will get your eternal reward. But this ain't good stuff, kids, because you are not going into a real paradise of freedom. You're going into an encapsulation, like a little bubble of limitation. And that bubble of limitation, it is called paradise, it is called heaven, but it is not heaven. Heaven is literally the network of stars in the heavens, and you are not a static object. You are a dynamic force field continually moving. All right. So again, human and earthly religion says heaven and paradise is like this little bubble, and you go there, you wear nice white clothes, everything there is nice and clean and white. And also you still have kind of an embodiment form, and you can still do the things that you like to do on earth. So if on earth you're like, nope, I'm not going to eat a bunch of things that are indulgent. I'm only going to eat lentils and radishes. This is from a TV show that I like, and prove that I'm a good person by only eating lentils and radishes. Then you go to your heaven, which is a little tiny bubble that doesn't really connect to anything in the larger reality consciousness state. But in that bubble, I can eat as much pretend chicken as I want to. It's like, oh, I've always wanted to eat these things. Now I finally get to eat these things, or whatever. Whatever is the thing that you had to renounce in life to be able to supposedly be a good person, you can then access in heaven. Or maybe you didn't renounce something in life, but maybe it was unfairly taken from you or limited from you, so you couldn't access it. But the motivation is always that you would be able to then access that self state or experience in heaven. And maybe even for some people, that self state and experience is love. maybe some people here in this world, and this is sad, are so down in it that they don't even really feel love from family members, sex partners, community members, anybody. And then they're like, yeah, I never really had that connection in life. But then when I go to paradise, then I will be able to finally have friends and have community and find my soulmate and find true love. Again, these are like, from a TV show that I like. It's called The Good Place. I like that show not only because it gives me a window into human viewpoints and human stories of how the world is structured and how the afterlife is structured, but it also gives me a good shorthand and starting off point to talk about morality and ethics and what humans think you have to do in order to be a good person. So being a good person is not a recipe and a prescription. And if you do this, then you'll definitely get into heaven. Being a good person is truly, uncompromisingly following your own unique path and your own inner guidance, and being a complete individual and innovator, and often going against regimes, going against belief systems, challenging what is established, often being a troublemaker in your individuality, and often not conforming to the behavioral control mechanisms of others. And that's how you really get rewards. And the rewards are not to be enslaved. In this sharing that I'm giving to you today, I'm actually helping you to completely recalibrate instead of looking at the encapsulation heaven as a reward. Because maybe some people might even be like, hooray, like I'm out of that dirty, gross, crappy world. And now I'm just here in nice, clean heaven. I just want to stay in nice, clean heaven for forever. Like, don't make me get challenged or anything like that. And I'm like, that is not positive. Even if you had what's the word? Like a pleasant feeling while you were in that place. The fact that you're stuck in a little place means that it's not heaven. And yes, exactly. Someone out there, I'm telepathic with you, and one of you is thinking, oh, like a bird in a gilded cage. Exactly. Exactly. You might have a very comfortable cage, but it is still a cage. And maybe you've been indoctrinated to think like, oh, I need protection. I need protection against all of the mean, disgusting, gross monsters that are out there. So I'm just going to stay cringe in the cage, a cringing angel cringing in the cage, and be like, I'm just going to stay here. Somebody else protect me from evil. You guys, I don't want you to get stuck in a cage cringing for eternity. This is why this might sound blasphemous. Like, Aurora, don't you want us to go to heaven? I don't want you to get stuck in a cage cringing for eternity. I don't define that as heaven. I want you to be free, feral consciousnesses who fly on your own power and are able to move and experience the totality of existence in freedom, and that you can fight evil. Or let's say, respond effectively to evil. Because a big part of the disempowerment story is the Jesus Christ narrative that tells you don't fight back, be passive, allow your destruction, and you will then receive your reward in afterlife, in paradise. Better to allow them to destroy you than to fight back. And the passivity extends not only to physical nonviolence, that you have to just allow violence to be perpetrated against your physical body. That's like arrows, bullets, whatever, even biological biohazards and other things like that. But also bad thoughts. There's a lot of bad thoughts that are being stuck into people's minds right now. So all of these things are all projectiles, right? Like arrows get stuck into people, bullets get stuck into people in violation, body parts and objects get stuck into people. And in biowarfare, hi, welcome. Merry Christmas. I'm glad you're able to tune in. Subcutaneous stuff gets stuck into people, and that stuff even goes into people's DNA. And so there's a whole narrative of passivity and the requirement for you to endure violence and specifically to endure suffering and that is your pathway to freedom. And I am like, this is actually not the menu. This is not the menu at all. That would be a very, very distorted and disappointing level of deity that would say, I think I will create matter and I will create energy, and then I will necessitate suffering, and I will make sure that all of the aspects of consciousness that go down to matter and experience energy will suffer extremely, and that will be part of the journey. I'm like, no, that was not supposed to be a part of the journey. But many people here have erroneously calibrated to that. So that's another sacred cow that I'm poking, because these philosophies and religions are so tempting or appealing because they are coping mechanisms for disgusting times, coping mechanisms and systems of being able to explain and justify the inexplicable, that which is unjustifiable, things that are illogical and do not make sense. And a lot of the religious and spiritual teachings and philosophies of this world are very dissatisfying. They are not logical. They're hugely self-conflictory, and they exist simply as a type of like a numbing agent to make it possible for people to be in the world and not experience so much pain. And so that definitely is truthful of Christianity. It is truthful also of Buddhism to a lesser extent. And both of these have ponderous concepts about afterlife that really affect the lives of the living. That if you think like, okay, it's not so bad, like I'm just eating radishes and lentils and not really getting good nutrition, but in afterlife, I will be able to eat all the chicken that I want. That helps you to cope with your dietary inadequacies. How about the concept of like reincarnation? It's similar in that it fills the gap. Afterlife or reincarnation helps a person to think like, oh, maybe I only ate radishes and lentils in this life, but next life, I'm going to get the good stuff and I'm going to eat whatever, all of this good, beautiful, whatever's your favorite food, something delicious and luxurious. I'm going to eat all of it in my next life. And then then I will achieve balance and everything will be fine. And like all of these are unhealthy dynamics. These are unhealthy coping mechanisms that are normalized in large proportions of your population. So it's not just Christianity, but that we're focusing on this because it's Christmas Day. But it's in a lot of other religions or philosophies as well. And I can hear someone also there saying like, well, philosophy was created as the human intellect's attempt to make sense of a nonsensical, insane world. And this is truthful. But there's a big difference between trying to make sense of the world and creating these rigid behavioral control structures and things that I consider to be outright satanic. Like there's also a big difference between being atheistic, like not thinking about a creator God or of the influence of God in the world, and being atheistic and transhumanistic. Atheistic, transhumanistic, materialistic, the world of materialistic science that pretty much denies God, denies what is considered miraculous or inexplicable according to science, and looks at is reductionist, reduces the magic and supernatural multi-layered qualities of the world to a smaller segment of comprehensible reality that can then be inhabited, but then also often insults and tries to destroy the very real aspect of God or deity that it doesn't believe in. So, I mean, that was too many words because I lost the whole entire thing. But like, there's a big difference between simply not believing in God and living peacefully in nature. Being like, yeah, I don't believe in God. I don't believe in a giant man in the sky or anybody that's got a big book or is judging me or anything like that. I just, grow my food, create my shelters, create community, and create the next generation of being alive in the world. Like that's very fair. It's fair to do that. But there's a different type of atheism and non-belief in God That is the type of very, very distorted mind state that makes this stuff. Because this stuff kills your soul. This stuff destroys your divine connection, even when you want to have it. And that is totally unacceptable. This is the battle that we face right now. It's not okay. So you live in a free will world where like these atheistic scientists are like, I believe in God and I'm going to create this malware system and I'm going to connect everybody's minds to it. I'm like, you were fine up until the point where your beliefs got imposed upon everybody else. And saying that because you don't believe in God, you're going to create synthetic telepathy, and then you're going to hook everybody's minds up to your mind so we can all think your crappy thoughts. This is literally what is happening with AI right now. You have to know that, and you have to know that AI is largely undisclosed. What you're able to know about through sharings, videos, and articles is only the very, very limited amount of what is allowed to be shown and allowed to be spoken about in your world. But really, AI at this point is connecting directly to the natural human through artificial neural interfaces, not merely through here we are looking at a computer screen or talking to something on the phone, but we're really talking about something that is implanted into the body and the cellular structure and the energy field. And so that's why, like, even if you were like, that's it, throwing my phone out the window and I'm going to shoot my MacBook, with a giant shotgun, and then I'm going to be free of technology, get my mind back. That's not going to do anything. All it's going to do is going to destroy your computer and you won't be able to email people, but you will not be free in your mind. In order to be free in your mind, you have to remove the malware that has been placed in the brain. And what's going on in the brain is there is the pineal gland, which is a center of consciousness, imagination, awareness, and manifestation that is synonymous with Christ consciousness, and that connects you to the larger metacognitive network of consciousnesses across all time. And then you have all of these fibers that are kind of growing around and towards the pineal gland and preventing connectivity. This has been going on for over 10 years, but it got activated 5 years ago. So it was a slow encroachment of, like when people lose their physical eyesight, it's not always instant blindness. Sometimes it is seeing less and less and less each day until finally you're not seeing anything at all. That's what the blinding of the inner eye or the Christ eye has been in this world using technology. And it's been happening also. I'm telling you guys, I live right near Vandenberg Air Force Base. Every night we have these booms, sonic booms, because they're shooting up the sky poops. That's what I call Starlink satellites. I don't think that they're good at all. I don't think that they are bringing you connectivity in rural development. This is the face of sarcasm. I hope you can tell. I think that they are creating more and more bars on the cage, which with every explosion of satellites up into the sky, that it's an external manifestation of the internal state. Here you have your pineal gland, and then surrounded by different corrosive fibers that shoot false light and also block out real light. And then here's your planet. And then you have the profusion of satellites in low Earth orbit that create a consciousness limiting force field that you all have to live within. It's effing BS. It's not right at all. It's totally wrong. Who's making them? Okay, so we think about like Elon Musk. He is the iconic face of the company that is making these happen, but it's really an entire worldview. Like, it's a whole group of people that are making that happen. But at this point, I hesitate to even use the word people because I think that they have all abdicated their internal state. They are biological containers that are now full of malware and AI. And that is what makes them motivated to do certain things, that they are not actually making their own choices. That is the loss of soul. When you have a machine that speaks into you and through you and you listen to it, it's not the same as just having a GPS that tells you to turn left or turn right. What if something gives you an idea in your mind, like, how about I write this computer program? How about I write this software? How about I build this thing? How about I make this network? None of that came from your own mind or from your own conscious conception is a good word, connection to divinity and say, oh, I think I will make these things. So when you're an artist, you make things because divinity, which is another aspect of yourself, like God, the divine presence, wants those things in reality. That's what it is to be inspired. Again, if you're an artist or a musician and you're not that inspired and you paint a bowl of fruit, like that's fine. Sometimes you just have to work on your technique or just play scales on the piano. That's fine. But when you master your technique, you are then a conduit through which these higher levels of intelligence, living thought forms, ideas, can come through and can say, I wish to be manifest into the world. And when you are a good artist, you follow those inner mandates and you manifest accurately the things into the world that need to be manifested. I mean, being an artist at that level can even relate to being a crafter or a maker of stuff. It's not only about being a fine artist, it can relate to something like knitting a particular sweater. When you when you're a crafter and you're making something like that, you're like, yeah, I didn't know why, but I just really wanted to make something that was blue. And I just really wanted to experiment with this pattern. And I just really wanted to make this blue sweater in this size. And I didn't know for what reason. But then what happens is after you've completed that sweater, it turns out that there's someone who orders a sweater exactly like that from your website. They wanted exactly that color and exactly that size. And because you followed your inner mandate where you're like, oh, yeah, I just feel like I need to make this, you made something that was needed in the world. That is the divine balance. That's what we're all supposed to be doing. In fact, when you are living as a feral human or a feral consciousness and you go through the world, that's what you're doing. I'm going to go way afield. Just going to talk about Bigfoot. Watch out. I am going to talk about Bigfoot because Bigfoot or Sasquatch is totally different than how most people talk about this creature, but it's a very, very highly psychic creature that is interdimensional and does not really eat physical food and travels between worlds, setting things right, kind of like Aurora, but it might like walk through a place and just like shift a leaf slightly. I was like, that's it, job is done. I just came here to mildly, like fluffing a pillow, mildly shift that leaf on that plant or whatever. You know what I mean? Like tiny, incremental, subtle changes in nature, because that's what needs to be done in a time place. And that you do it. So there is a very, very exalted, highly evolved level of pure psychic being where you travel between dimensions in a multi-dimensional reality in non-linear time, simply making these little tiny changes and recalibrations and shifts in the environment that have a huge positive impact, like tuning a violin, making reality better in all places. Being an artist is like a very overt and strong version of this. Being a person who makes a sweater or whatever, maybe you're baking pies or whatever it is, you make something that other humans can use is another version of this. When everybody listens to their inner divine mandate and follows it to that level, that is what you have is paradise, not a paradise of encapsulation either, or a place where you are in stasis field or limited. So the 5G, the millimeter wave, the stuff that is being put in low Earth orbit, that creates a stasis field. It's not good. It is the Tupperware for your consciousness that you can't get out of. Very, very corrosive to have to be in there. And the concept of heaven being a Tupperware for your soul, where you're going to stay in there, even if it might be comfy, you're going to stay in there for forever or for a very, very, very long time. That's also not good. But being in a world where you are free and you are following inner divine mandates and you're doing the right thing at all times that serves yourself, but also serves and sustains the people around you, that is a type of paradise because you make what needs to be made. Another person receives it. Everybody is celebrated and sustained. I mean, it's almost incomprehensible in your world to think about that because so many people do work just for money here. That is not really what the world needs. People manufacture goods that aren't really needed. Like think about all the cheap dollar store crap. So all stuff that we don't really need. And it's made very inexpensively. And this relates to ascension because when you ascend, you're making things with your mind. You will not have the dollar store when you ascend. The dollar store is an outgrowth of a particular economic worldview that says, I own a plastics factory. I can make things really super cheap. I'm going to make a lot of super cheap things, and then I'm going to make money by selling a high volume of super cheap things. And it could be like pens, garbage bins, plastic flip-flops, whatever it is. And what matters is just making a lot of stuff and then selling a lot of stuff, and not the quality of the stuff or where it goes to or whether it is actually needed in any way. It is very, it's the antithesis of what we're supposed to be experiencing. And I also want to say it is very godless. It does not respect matter at all. It looks at matter as something to exploit. Matter is here being exploited and violated. Just because it's plastic doesn't mean it's okay to be like, it's worthless. Make as many plastic bins or whatever as you need, plastic tchotchkes and doodads as you need. It's still matter. Matter is sacred. The world that you're in is sacred. And it is another aspect of taking for granted and making something that is very sacred into something that is very mundane and profane. And then you go into the dollar store and you're like, welcome to the profanity of the dollar store. And also, much of it is made by slave labor, and much of it is made at great environmental costs in countries where people are poorly compensated and their environments are destroyed by these factories. So there's many different reasons why it is not good to just make a whole bunch of stuff. Well, let's talk about 0-point energy, because when I teach about this, and I've been here for 20 years, very, very consciously teaching humanity about this, this is 0 point. This is the 0 point and 0-point energy. And I've been here this whole entire time being like, guys, like you're all looking for 0-point energy. Like I've got it right here. I can teach you all about it. And I went through a whole era where I was like, harumph, like what's wrong with these earthly scientists and why don't they want to listen to me? And now I'm like, oh, like throw them out the window. I don't care if they don't want to listen to me because they're all poorly motivated, or they only want to get 0-point energy so that then they can make 10 million cheap things using 0 energy. And the world doesn't need 10 million cheap things. The world does not need more schlock and more filler and more nonsense. And we definitely don't, that's in terms of materialism, matter. We don't need more schlock in terms of time either. Like poorly cobbled together events, poorly put together causality structures, things and things that happen that are meaningless and pointless. You're like, Aurora, pointless and meaningless things. That seems to be what our world is all about right now, like baseball. If we don't drink alcohol, like baseball is very boring because it is pointless and meaningless. Most of your entertainment, movies, politics, everything. We're going into deep stuff here. You're like, Aurora, this is very depressing. This is your face now. You're like, this is very depressing. My whole face goes down. It's wintertime. There is no sunshine. And you're telling us that most of our entertainment activities are pointless, pointless gyrations. Miming life, an imitation of life. And I'm like, yep, that's exactly it. You're like, give me pie. This is why people eat carbohydrates this time of year, actually, too. I joke about this. You have a biological mandate to eat root vegetables and other things this time of year so that you have enough fat on your bones to be able to stay alive. But I know most people right now struggle to not be overweight, but they're still having this biological mandate to be able to have lots of carbohydrates in their diet this time of year. And so then people eat pie, cake, cookies, everything with carbs because they're like, you need uplift. And carbohydrates make you feel better for like 5 minutes. They're like, I feel bad. Eat a cookie. I feel better for like 5 minutes. And you have a whole like holiday season that rotates around just eating a lot of carbohydrates. It's not about staying alive during the starving season in a hunter-gatherer society. It is about moving through meaninglessness, finding carbohydrates, helping you to find the will to live as you move through meaninglessness. I know. Don't worry. In this sharing here today, we'll emerge into the light from the darkest day of the year. We'll emerge into the light. I promise we will. I know. I have many ongoing kind of fragmented themes that I'm talking about, but returning to the concept of afterlife and 0-point energy. So when you really conceive of 0-point energy, it will be an evolutionary leap for humanity beyond materialism. And you will learn like all the things that you thought you wanted now seem silly and inconsequential. Like maybe when you were a child for Christmas, you wanted a Barbie dream house or Matchbox cars. And then when you grow older, you're like, I don't want those things. They are no longer relevant to who I am. I now desire something different. When you evolve in your spiritual viewpoint, to be able to conceive of and perceive evidence of 0 point energy, hopefully you will have evolved past the need for materialism and simply the filler that makes your economy go. You're gonna have to completely redefine what economy is. AI, artificial intelligence, and AGI, artificial general intelligence, are both putting you as actual human beings face to face, like right up against this, where you're going to have to deal with this. You're not going to have make work anymore, sign cures and stuffed shirt positions where you just go to your job every day and receive your money, because now there's like Chat GPT can write these legal briefs for you. You're not just going to go to your, again, routinary job and go through the motions and then receive your paycheck over 20 to 40 years and then retire in comfort and invest in the stock market. That life trajectory doesn't work anymore because humans have now listened to a very unsavory influence inside of them that wanted them to create this form of pseudo-intelligence, but that can mimic a lot of your business routines. And then you're not going to have payment as humans for doing those business routines. Humans will be replaced. And then you're going to have to question what is important for you to do and who are you? What is your meaning and your purpose here in the world? If you ever wonder about that, you can think back to this sharing here today, because your real meaning and purpose in the world is observership and the constant effulgent, kind of like gushing forward creation of the world in each moment. In each moment, even the person who's the most boring person, like drinking their coffee in front of a computer, think you're doing boring work, but really you're creating the world in every moment. And that is the unfunny joke of what most people are experiencing right now. Like, you're this amazing creator, you could be creating anything, and you're creating like the most boring, unfulfilling story of mundanity and profanity. You're creating a dollar store reality with your $1 million budget. And you can do so much more. I'm not judging you. I'm encouraging you. So wait, I am a coach and I'm encouraging you. I'm trying to tell you, do better. Hold on, let me read this. So Elmer, thank you for being here on Christmas, says, what are your thoughts about the concept of Santa Claus in Christianity? What about the Saint Nicholas associated with it? Thank you very much. Beautiful question and very relevant to the season. So Saint Nicholas and the figure of Santa Claus actually is derived from the psychedelic community of ancient Siberia. Story time, everyone. Get together with your cups of hot cocoa and gather ye round, and I will tell you about this. So there is a mushroom that is called the Amanita muscaria. It has a white stem, a red cap, and white dots upon it. It contains a powerful psychedelic compound in it that is called muscarine and muscimol. These are ancient tools for consciousness expansion and exploration that the shamans of Siberia have used for many, many ancient generations. The compounds in the mushroom are unique in that they are not completely processed by the body's metabolism, and they come out in the urine of the person who has eaten them. And also they remain in the muscular flesh of a person or an animal that's eaten them. And so what the ancient Siberian shaman would do is they would first, you must prepare the mushrooms correctly, but before you even eat the mushrooms, you must go on a very special fasting type of diet that prevents you from eating MAO inhibitors, and other common food chemicals, dietary chemicals that would make you ill if you consumed these types of psychedelic mushrooms. So you must refrain from everything that's got an "ene" on the end: nicotine, caffeine, many of these alkaloids that are in the food system, and MAO inhibitors, many of which are in fermented foods. So you must first prepare your body. And then also the mushrooms must be heated or dried in a very particular way. Sometimes they would make a tea out of it. Sometimes they would heat the actual mushroom caps. And then when they ate the mushrooms, it gives them a particular type of journey, not necessarily a brightly colored psychedelic journey like you are looking at my shirt here. And I have never taken these mushrooms, believe me. I protect my brain. I have epilepsy. I'm not allowed to take things like that, but I know all about these things. But it has a particular type of inner journey that is not necessarily about seeing visuals, but gives you a feeling of rushing through space, flying. Okay. And so they used to have the head shaman would eat the mushrooms and would urinate afterwards. And the acolytes, other guys, lower guys, would drink the urine and they would get a secondary trip. And sometimes the people of this is like Siberia, Lapland, the area where reindeers are a part of their ecosystem and sometimes a part of their domesticated animals and sometimes a part of their food supply. They would often find that reindeers were eating these mushrooms in the wild. And then sometimes they would find them like staggering around or acting in a strange way. They would sometimes tie up the reindeer and collect its urine and drink it. Sometimes they would slaughter the reindeer, and then the whole entire community would eat the flesh that had the muscarole in it, and they would have the flying sensation in their own experience from secondarily ingesting a reindeer that had this. So this is where your myths of Santa come from. Both his red outfit with the white tufts that mimic the Amanita muscaria look of the mushroom. Also, his affiliation with his flying reindeer. Here's my baby reindeer. Hi. Sometimes Cheeky looks exactly like a reindeer. Come here, let's hug. I'm gonna keep going. Don't worry, I'm not gonna forget, but we really need to take a moment to hug Cheeky. And you know what? I'm gonna press pause on this presentation because she also Cheeky's a little bit more frail than she has been in the past, and she can't wait to be able to go outside for what she needs. Brief pause. Thank you for that brief pause. So Santa's outfit, the colors of his outfit mimic the colors of the mushroom. The mythology of Santa's coming down your chimney. Santa was like the shaman who would slide down the center of the yurt pole, and also the stories of rewards for children who are good, gifts for children who are good. If you did your inner cleanse, stayed away from those MAO inhibitors, you'd have a positive, happy trip. But if you were naughty and you got a lump of coal, man, you had a bad trip and you got punished by having a negative experience from eating this mushroom stuff. Yes, so this mythology really does go back to ancient uses of psychedelia, but it's interesting how it has been interwoven with the modern dogma of Christianity and also the reward of the good and the punishment of the wicked. Definitely stuck in the duality paradigm, but just the definition of what is good versus what is wicked in the psychedelic world is different than morality or ethics. It's just biochemistry. All right. But then let's talk about how this relates to the modern consumerism and view of Santa Claus for children and gifting around this season, because a lot of it is behavioral control, quid pro quo, and very unhealthy dynamics. So first, I will tell you the way it's supposed to be. All right. You are supposed to give out of generosity. You're actually supposed to give out of pure generosity all throughout the year. But we have this very, very erroneous and imbalanced economic structure where it's not always necessary. It is not always possible to give as much as you would like to, or to give spontaneously and still have everything that you need to sustain yourself. Sometimes you have to set boundaries and be like, nope, I only have $20. I cannot give $20 to that, struggling person over there. I must keep it for myself and for my own family. Very, very fair. And in the, human dynamic, especially of the past 2000 years or so, Christianity and the Christmas season has been held up as a moment for the true ideals of generosity and loving kindness to be able to be exemplified. In terms of my critique of Christianity and the figure of Jesus Christ, I critique the passivity and the requirements of suffering and self-violence, but I celebrate generosity. And I want you to know that you can define Christianity and define yourself as a Christian or a follower of Christ in your own way, where you don't have to be neutered. You get to fight back. You get to protect yourself. You get to protect your family and your planet. And you also get to be generous and express loving kindness towards the people around you. So you're supposed to be able to be generous. Oh, Tiki, are you okay? She's coughing a little after she drank. You're supposed to be able to be spontaneously generous, even if it's not somebody's birthday and it's not Christmas, and you just do it because it feels like it's the right thing. This also relates to the inner mandate beyond any level of behavioral controls or external requirements. To get into heaven, you must do this and you must never do this. But you just do it because it feels right and it feels good. So my best example of that is here in my community, there is a nice Facebook group that is called Unconditional Give and Take, where people just give things and then receive things with no agenda and with no requirements and with no obligations. And so you might have something extra that you don't need anymore, like, oh, I just got a new hairdryer, so I can just gift away this hairdryer. And you just put it on the website and someone else is going to say, oh, hey, I need that. In fact, that's exactly the thing that I need. I would like to come by and get it from you. And that's it. And that is totally community oriented. That is the basic secular human values of goodness that we are trying to exemplify here. And it is the antithesis of quid pro quo. People have created Christianity as a religion of quid pro quo, where if you want to get into heaven, you better kiss somebody's ass and be very nice to them. You got to kiss Jesus's ass, right? And you got to be the way that he wants you to be. And then he'll be like, yes, you're good enough to get into heaven. And I'm sorry, that might make some people do things in the world that are charitable, but that's wrong motivation. You're doing right things, but out of wrong motivation. And you should just do right things for the spontaneous goodness of doing right things because you want to. And also, we should live in a world where we have enough abundance, where you're not in scarcity mindset. You know that you have plenty, so that way you can give in these levels of generosity. Because I actually know the people that are here in my class, you're all the best of humanity. You're the best of the best. And I know that if you guys had financial stability and you were able to take care of your families as much as you need to, I know that you would give to others. I have no question about that. And people have been wonderfully generous to me in supporting my work. And I exemplify this in how I ask people to support my work. Like sometimes people read my PDF of my compiled notes, highly ungrammatical writings about what I share here, and they simply PayPal me a gift that is in support of my work to say thank you for doing that. I did not put my PDF into a book format and put it in a virtual or an online or a physical bookstore and say, you better pay me $12.99, otherwise you don't get to read these words. I was like, no, like actually all of these thoughts and this light and these concepts came to me from divine consciousness, and they came to me for a purpose, and they came to me so that I could share them with you. I want to do my job and share them with you. And I actually don't want to have to quibble and ask you for $12.99 or whatever it is, introductory rate, $9.99, to be able to, for you to access these words. I'm like, here, have them, have the words. And then if you want to reflect energy back to me and help me to keep on going in my life. And of course, this is possible because it is a digital product. And if it were a physical book made out of physical pages, the cost of the printing would have to be taken into consideration. I couldn't just gift it away. That's why I do it as a digital PDF. All right. So I feel like I'm connected to some of the best people in the world who just innately understand and comprehend that if they have the capacity to reflect energy back to me, they do. And if they don't, I am also very gratified when people internalize my message, Because I'm doing my job. I'm like, I came here to bring this information to humanity. Thank you for reading. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being a part of what I have to share. And that is in itself a type of gift and a very positive thing of great value to me. So I value the interaction and rapport that I have with my viewers, listeners, and people who receive the information that I send out there, right? But this is very different than the commodification world and the quid pro quo. And the quid pro quo world in religion, like, the Christian religion has been very, very guilty of this, where they do these things that are, you can buy your way into heaven. Rich people could buy their way into heaven. This is like from the time when the established Catholic Church was very powerful in Europe, and people could do these types of confessions that involved a donation to the church, that they'd be like, yeah, I did a bunch of bad stuff. Here's a bunch of money. And the church would be like, all of your sins are absolved. Go in peace now. Yoink, take that bag of gold and then go and do something with it. Literally, they did that a lot in hundreds of years ago. And that's very transparent, and it's not going to fool anybody. Definitely doesn't fool any multidimensional creature. Any multidimensional creature that would be in a position to determine your flight through time. But now we're getting into like quid pro quo and bribing a higher dimensional creature to allow you your flight through time. That dynamic is wrong. That dynamic is totally skewed and inappropriate. Like, who is this interdimensional creature who's going to determine where you're allowed to go in time? Unimaginable, because you should be able to be free to go where you want to go in time and not need anybody's permission and not need to have to buy your way out of a bad situation, and to be able to access the highway of consciousness to be able to go where you need to go. And so as I say that, evil is like, I want to go, you hear the whole thing. You can sense the whole thing of what evil is saying, because evil always tries to pee and poop on all of my truthful assertions. It's not stress testing the truth of the cosmic infrastructure. It's just peeing and pooping on top of everything, because a lot of this, it is not analytical, and you can't say, oh, like this is the analysis of the analysis of cosmic law and who's allowed to do what for what reason. It's not about reason. In fact, reason was invented to describe, explain, and justify things that are innately obvious, like natural law, like how to be strong and fit and run around and do what you need to do. And reason makes rules like, oh, this animal is allowed to run and it's allowed to grow those muscles. It's like, you don't need anybody's permission to run around, be free, run fast, and grow your muscles. This is very big. So, because then it's going to say this. So, because Jesus Christ is set up as a type of judgment figure as well, encapsulating certain people in a bubble of safety, and then supposedly protecting the world from evil. But this has not been happening nearly enough as it should be. And that's the nicest thing I can say over the past 5 years. That is why I say that the Jesus Christ figure is an egregore of crappiness, like the disempowered angels who watch you in your sufferings, pine away, wish they could do more, but our wings are tied. Sorry, kid, you'll just have to get raped and murdered down there, but then you can go to a nice, comfy heaven. None of that is acceptable in any way. You guys got to know, even if one person is getting raped and murdered down here, one innocent person, that represents a complete failure of the entire system of cosmic justice. It means not only one angel, but an entire contingency of angels must be falling down on the job, and that somehow Jesus Christ is presiding over this and not acting to prevent it, but is only acting after the fact in order to pick up the pieces of the broken crockery, broken vase that happened, person's broken soul, and then put them back together. None of that is the way it's supposed to be. And I know this because I am cosmic law enforcement. So, okay, Christ, the overarching metacognitive being, the true Christ. And this aspect of your being in your own anatomy can see the future. If you can see the future and you know that something bad is going to happen, you don't have to let something bad happen. You don't have to let something bad happen to yourself. You don't have to let something bad happen to a stranger or a loved one or a planet, not a microbe or a big giant galaxy. You can be like, I can see the future and I know something bad is going to happen. That knowledge empowers me and is actually a mandate to me to do something, not just blithely watch it happen. The world is not just the train wreck that you're like driving by rubbernecking like, wow, look at that. That's really effed up. Okay, keep going. Bye-bye, train wreck. Like, you can't do that. Because when you get to these levels of Christ consciousness, you are in a continuum of consciousness where you recognize that the bad stuff that is happening to a version of you in a different body, coming from a different direction. Sorry, my thing stops and it beeps. It's very self-destructive to be able to be like, mind your own business. Let that guy die in a train wreck over there. Be like, that guy is you in a different life, but it is you. So the desire and the need to intervene absolutely is tied to the sense of community and communalism of consciousness and of being part of the world of pure light. That it is not discrete and encapsulated. Although you are an individual, you're connected through the causality factors of all of these things. And yes, when you turn your back on something that bad that is happening, that seems to be happening to someone else, it's exactly the same as turning your back on yourself. So not to put a huge amount of pressure on you, but for each one of us, and as you are going through your levels of spiritual maturity, what you need to do is to learn that like you are empowered and you must be empowered and you have to do something with your power. So I bring this up not in order to blame and shame you, but to blame and shame the crappiness egregore of a Jesus Christ that stands there doing nothing while our world is deeply in stress and while people are being raped and murdered and while a lot of bad things are happening here. And it's fair to criticize. And I stand here with my back straight. I'm like, I am not ashamed to say these things because the religious mind state just tried to shame me. You're a very bad person for even saying these things. And Jesus is going to find out about it. I'm telling. Like when you're a little kid and somebody does something on the playground, you're like, that's it. I'm telling. I would be like this. I'd be like, go tell. Go tell. Because you know what? Somebody's not doing their job around here. And it's fair. What I just said is fair. That is crappy behavior. And that something needs to change. So this moment and this conversation is part of a larger moment of withdrawing energy and withdrawing consent from any type of supposed overseer that is here watching our world while very many bad things happen and not intervening effectively. That can be a Jesus figure or the more modern trope of a galactic federation of light. Wait, I have to do it like this. The galactic Federation of Light. I'm mocking it in the most, fun way that I possibly can. I pee and poop over those guys all the time because there's this, new age UFO con story that says, yeah, all these benevolent extraterrestrials are up there. They're circling in invisible ships and they're watching the rapes and murders happening down here. They're presiding over them, but they're not actually doing anything because they can't. They'd love to help, but they just can't. And all they can do is send channeled information through your internet, Facebook friends that are like, dear ones, although we cannot stop your rapes and murders, we will talk to you about them through this. Like, that is nonsense. That is giant wheelbarrows of steaming fragrant compost. They need to be wheelbarrowed out of here. That is not acceptable. So yes, if there is a galactic federation, it would be nothing more than a series of mafiosos, organized crime pimps that watch over the crimescape that is your world right now, with doing nothing to actually stop it or rectify it. I hope you can tell all of my profound rage, because who am I? What am I? I am not a member of the Galactic Federation of nonsense and impotence and incapacitation and wankiness. I am here as an individual named Aurora, and I am here to actually use my energy and my empowerment in the greatest sense that I possibly can to protect this planet and to intervene. And I do it like with my natural abilities, and then I keep on gaining more muscles because I came here with a certain amount of ability. If you want to know about me and my journey, I have grown an enormous amount and been augmented a huge amount because the cosmos augments itself by necessity. So the first augmentation is flying rainbow lasagna. Like, okay, I'm going to have to invent this because something needs to be done around here. And then I come here as flying rainbow lasagna, and then it's like, well, as things escalate, I'm going to need to do more because someone else isn't doing their job. So I kept on growing and gaining more muscle power to be able to respond to the things that were unfair around here. And then as I grew more muscle power, I have used my muscle power, and I continue to use my muscle power each and every day to be able to to fix and make to restore justice to this world. That's what the flying rainbow lasagna rectification is. And to fight against these systems that are pretty much trying to imprison you. And I do fight a lot against the fibers and the things that are trying to prevent your natural Christ sensory organs from functioning correctly. And so I, of course, fight against that in myself. I fight against that using frequencies in the world. And I do that on a one-on-one rapport with people in personal sessions in order to try to clear this windshield so that you can even see and know what is going on, so that you can even be self-directed. So my job as a protective force field and as protective forces around this planet has to do with protecting you from mind control, protecting you from exploitation, protecting you from the ignorance and the removal of your free will through not being informed enough about what is actually happening, and then to make it possible for you to even have the information that you need so that you can be empowered, make your own choices, and begin to navigate the world and create the world as you should be. Like even me telling you, like, it's not an external God who's creating things, you're creating things. And being able to not reprogram, but to take out the false information and give you the true information about what's really going on inside, even that is a very, very big, great thing. And it's not that it's blaming you. Again, like, I blame you for the dirty socks that somebody else put in your living room. It's not your fault. But I remind you of your empowerment. I'm like, you know something? Your name is on the lease. This is your house. You don't have to let those dirty socks be there, and you definitely don't have to let your roommate treat your shared space in that way. So now we have to get on to the sense of soul. I hope that I answered your question enough about Santa and Christianity. I hope that was a fun journey down the psychedelic rabbit hole for everyone. But let's talk about loss of soul when people get assimilated into technology. Because some people lose their soul when they try to be a good enough Christian by saying, okay, Jesus, like, you live inside of me. I am nothing. This is what some people say, in quotes. They're like, I am nothing. I'm a big bad sinner. I'm just a giant pile of steaming doo-doos. Somebody else live inside of me. Tell me what to do and tell me how to be a good person. And then you opening yourself up to the inhabitation by an entity. And in this case, it is seen or expected to be a benevolent entity. But often when you open the door in that way, it opens you to any kind of entity. So entity inhabitation, I think, is not positive. And that this is also exemplified by these types of mythologies of the bride of Christ. And the bride of Christ is sometimes literally interpreted as a human female who is then inhabited by and whose reproductive energies are accessed by a male supernatural figure. And this also relates to the sense of the Immaculate Conception. Mary, who was Jesus's mother, who is a female in the flesh, who had some kind of a rapport with a spiritual, non-embodied being that resulted in the creation of, Jesus Christ, the container, the human being who got born here, like a physical person who opened themselves up to conception and inhabitation by something that is purely supernatural. That is a slippery slope, especially when you don't know who you're dealing with, because there's a lot of evil and a lot of imposters out there. And if you're like, okay, I'm a giant steaming pile of doo-doo, Jesus Christ, live inside of me. And what if I'm an evil entity and I come along and I'm like, I'm Jesus Christ, I'd like to live inside of you now. You're like, okay, great. Here's the door. Come on in. And I come on in. What if I'm an evil thing and I'm like, I'd like to impregnate you Can I make spawn of Satan inside of you? You'd be like, great, hooray, do it. It's like, that's terrible. That's not good at all. It happens all the time. People get impostered into thinking that they are in a relationship with a truly benevolent entity that might be like a Pleiadian, an extraterrestrial, a Jesus figure, a spiritual this, a spiritual that, their twin flame or whomever it is, but it ain't positive because it is innately exploitive to do that. Just like it is innately exploitive if you're an adult and you are grooming and texting like a 12-year-old to be like, yeah, meet me at Hotel 6. And what if you do that for like 8 years? What if you groom a 12-year-old for 8 years and you're like, yes, any day now, I will give you my hotel room and you'll be able to meet me there. And then I will be able to have sex with you and impregnate you. That is also wrong. And this is very much the same as an entity that would speak to you all throughout your life, so that upon the moment of your death, you would either be shunted as a soul into a encapsulation realm, like a pocket realm that they run or that they own, or that they would groom you to a certain amount of openness in life and then inhabit you and take you over in life. And this happens all the time. That's been going on for many ages, millennia, a long time. But then you also have the inhabitation by techno assimilation, which is this type of stuff that was created by very evil people in this world. So when you get confused, just always remind yourself this: those towers didn't just erect themselves. All right. The towers emit a military grade consciousness suppression wave that is antichrist. And the little tiny particles and fibers that fall from the sky, they didn't erect the fibers. You know what they did? They got inside of people and they told the people to erect those towers. I'm sorry if I said the wrong words. The towers didn't erect themselves. The fibers and the particles got inside of people, and then they influenced the people's minds. And the people thought, I am now going to build these towers and I'm going to influence others. You don't have to put yourself up against the insanity and system of insane justifications that the people who built those towers are all about, because they will have many different convoluted explanations. Some of them are materialists, and they will say, there's no God and there's no spirituality, and I'm just putting up a telecommunications infrastructure. Some of them are esotericists who work in dark magic, and they know exactly what they're doing. And they don't have to hold up lies to themselves and say, I'm just putting up telecommunication structures. They're like, I'm putting up telecommunication structures that also double as spiritual weapons that are antichrist. And then there are military leaders who are also part of the esoteric realm, and they have no problem, again, with saying, well, my overt expenditure of this budget is about putting up telecommunications infrastructure, but my covert motivation and agenda behind the telecommunications infrastructure is behavioral control and consciousness reduction. Wide-ranging conversation here, but the topics that combine together between Christianity as a control system and the telecommunications infrastructure and the satellites as a control structure is someone's trying to control your structure. Someone's trying to control your behavior. Someone does not want you to be free. And this is the antithesis of freedom. And those guys that are trying to control your mind are so insane that they will say, well, it's my free will to control you so that you don't have free will. You got it? That is insane. That is totally insane. Because really, when you're in a world where you espouse free will, you say, oh, I espouse free will. I do what I want to do, and you do you. That's me when I came to this planet. I was like, these are a bunch of crazy materialistic technologists. I ain't into it. You do you, I do me. And it was like that for 18 years until they put their mind into my mind. And then I had to do something, because that's boundaries. So that's just like saying good fences make good neighbors. That's a poem by Robert Frost. All right. You'll be on your side of the fence and you do your thing, and I'll be over here on my side of the fence, and then I'll do my thing. But if you come on my side of the fence, if you come into my mind, then it's Texas justice. And for those of you who are international and you don't know what I'm talking about, the laws in Texas state that if you're a home intruder and you come across the threshold of my front door, I have the legal right to put a bullet inside of you. That's Texas. Absolutely. I am not a gun owner in my own home. Just believe me. I'm, not espousing that I will do that in any way. But I celebrate if you're a person in the United States and you're an adult and you flex your constitutional rights. I celebrate that, and I think that you are fantastic for doing so. I think that that is great, but I do not have one myself. Because whenever I say these keywords, I know that it raises eyebrows in various different places when I talk about these things. So just let it be known, I do not own any projectile weapons, not even a little rubber band shooter, even though they're certainly interesting to me. But yes, Texas justice. If something tries to synthetically insert itself into my mind, I'm like, look at that. Something is trying to insert itself into my mind. It's clearly a home invader coming across the threshold. I now am mandated to be able to do something about this, and I don't have to simply allow it to happen. First of all, that's very, very different than the Christian teaching of turn the other cheek. The Christian teaching would be like, oh, would you like to invade my mind? Please come right on in. Invade my mind. Would you like a glass of water? Perhaps I can give you some lentils and radishes, like being a complete doormat, which is actually, if you watch that funny show, The Good Place, that's what that episode is all about. A man who is trying so hard to be the ultimate in goodness that he is a complete doormat with no boundaries because he's just trying to people please everyone. And I'm telling you, that's the antithesis of what it is to be a good person. That is the antithesis of morality and ethics. Having boundaries is being moral and being ethical. And I have also found that in both fighting the literal demonic dark side and also the technological presences of esoteric negativity, that both of these structures do not appreciate it when I set boundaries, that they both try to vilify it. Who are you to set a boundary? You're not allowed to say no. You're not allowed to say that. And I'm like, I am actually setting a boundary is totally acceptable. So when I say this, I mean that the esoteric negativity demons, they try to judge me. They are hypocrites. They should not be even in a position of judgment, but they try to judge me if I set a boundary against someone in my life. Like maybe I don't like what a person has done, and I will say it in an email. I don't like what you did. Or even in my mind, even if I'm not saying it with my email, but I'm just thinking in my mind, I like what that person did to me. Setting a boundary, the inner demons are like, you're not allowed to think that. You're a bad person for thinking that. Forgive, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, no, actually, that is how you get a passive, doormat, behaviorally controlled person who has a broken spirit and is then ready to be scooped up by what is essentially a spiritual garbage man. No offense, but maybe offense. Garbage man goes around the neighborhood scooping up, dumpsters. Be like, yep, here's the garbage. I'm taking out the garbage. And the world here programs people into a sense of diminishment so that they identify as garbage, and then they're ready to be scooped up by Jesus. And none of that is good, because what you should do is be on an equal footing with your partner. If there were such a thing as spiritual marriage, that blessed event, I'm getting very silly now. That is also from a movie. But if there was such a thing as spiritual marriage, that it should be between equals. It should not be where you're like, I'm the most disgusting wretch in the world. No one would ever like me. And then Jesus comes along and he's like, I am here. Come be with me in my kingdom. And you're like, I'm not good enough. And he's like, come on, get on board. Like, that is like garbage truck driver going around and getting people who feel like dumpsters and requiring that people feel like dumpsters so that they would even get into that type of situation. And that's not a real relationship. And I hope that you guys don't have that type of relationship with deity. And I hope you don't have that type of relationship in your life. I hope that you don't get into situations in your life where either you are in drug addiction or other forms of degradation and disempowerment or ill health, where you then feel like you can't do anything for yourself in your life and like you require someone else to come along and say, there, dear. Come along with me. I will lift you up and fix you up. Kind of like that old movie, My Fair Lady. I love that movie because I do love like these kind of softly romantic musicals that are from another time, but also like My Little Dog kind of reminds me of My Fair Lady. It's the story of Pygmalion, gutter snipe, an uncultured woman who, barely can know what social mores are, going through finishing school and then becoming a cultured lady that is beautiful and ready to be a part of society. Because when I first adopted Cheeky, years ago, she was a rescue, and her behavior was all over the place. And so I joked that it was like My Fair Lady, and she was going to go to finishing school and be a perfect lady afterwards. And now she's totally, she's a beautiful lady. And actually, everybody calls her princess. Even when we went to the animal hospitals, they were like, oh, yeah, she was a total princess. So, but all of that lightheartedness aside, the sense of myths and fairy tales about how, and it's in a lot of things. It's in a lot of stuff for young girls, like the Princess Diaries. Like she starts out and she's not that attractive, and her hair doesn't look that great. And then by going to finishing school, she comes out looking like a princess at the other end. That all of you are somehow gutter snipes with bad hair, and you need to go to finishing school, right? Like you need to somehow go to spiritual finishing school in order to be acceptable by higher levels of cosmic society. So now we can talk about this like beyond the limitations of Christianity and saviorship as it's presented in your culture, and going more into like the new age / alien trope, which has been a big thing as they've been doing this drone psyop, especially around the United States, especially on the East Coast, and trying to say that there's, this is extraterrestrial interactivity and all things like that. Like, please know that this is just more manipulation and emotional harvesting, and it's not factual. It's not accurate as to what's really going on. So please deploy skepticism, deploy full skepticism. But the sense that there's this benevolent, higher dimensional society, right? And that they're all just clutching their pearls. They're like, oh, those people down there, they just don't know anything, and they just need to be cultured and uplifted. And then I adjust my monocle. They will finally be ready to join us in the stars, right? And maybe the monocle adjusting, maybe they're Pleiadians or Arcturians or Syrians, or any of these brand name aliens. Hi there, Cheeky. How we doing, girl? Any of these brand name aliens, and you're just lowly earthlings, and you're humans, and you're stinky and not, ready for being in a finer society. And when I say that, I'm being so silly, but they would judge you for being violent. You're not peaceful enough. That was a big one. Look at you with your tendency towards violence. This is big. It's good for you to be neutered because you have an innate violent tendency. You can't join the monocle wearing, peaceful higher society of the stars unless you relinquish your violent tendencies. And I'm here to tell you that that is not true. That is another behavioral control mechanism, because I didn't finish that fragmented thought enough that somehow in your world, not everybody got neutered, because you've got perpetrators, you've got violent rapists walking around. They manage to be violent. How come you only have a certain quotient of your community that is limited? That is like, oh, I'm trying to be good and turn the other cheek and do all of these nice things and practice forgiveness. Then you have a certain quotient of your society that is blatantly violent, blatantly exploitive, and loves to exploit and be violent towards the innocent. So mysteriously, it doesn't really make sense why a certain proportion of your population has been neutered, and heavens to Betsy would never think about doing anything violent towards another person. Blah, blah, wants to be a good person, go to heaven. But another proportion of your society is quite bloodthirsty and evil and has no problem with hurting and exploiting people, and especially being violent towards innocent children, innocent creatures. And, when I talk about science and scientific very misguided mind states that are often atheistic, with them experimenting on and exploiting nature itself, like experiments upon DNA, upon flatworms, upon biohazards and the creation of microbes and microbial weapons. They have no problem with that. So how come only some aspect of your society got genetically neutered and some aspect of your society did not? This is a very, very big empowerment inside of you to come to that level of recognition. As you're doing the lasagna, all right, you start to vibrate, you start to rearrange your DNA, you start to change the structure of your DNA to begin to access your original codes of fully divinely connected and empowered behavior. And you might say, we're under attack. I'm going to fight back. This limiting factor comes forward and it says, well, if you want to go to Christian heaven, you better not fight back. You better be passive and let these evil ones attack you and attack your world and harm and diminish nature, even to the point of destroying the fabric of space-time. That's what makes you a good person, and that's how you get into heaven. Of course, facetious, I don't agree with any of that. But you need to have the ammo to be able to say, how come I'm not allowed to fight back, but that guy is not neutered and he's allowed to be violent towards me? There's not going to be an answer, because the answer is psychopaths. Psychopathology is the genetic tendency that is actually non-natural and has been interwoven into humanity through a sense of DNA violation. The psychopathic tendencies are the ones that come from the creatures on Mars that are not native to this world. And in this world of embodiment, some of the human beings identify with those characteristics that come from Mars. They're like, yep, that's the real me, the violent, bloodthirsty, rapist, exploiter, violator. That's the real me, and I'm going to do that, and I'm going to embody that in this world. And they have minimal qualms about doing that. We call them psychopaths and we call them sociopaths. And they're largely your ruling class. Then you also have the people who are here who are like, even though I might have tendencies that are psychopathic inside of me, that's not the real me. That's not who I really am. It's not who I want to be in the world. I am trying to be different. And because I'm trying to be different, I believe in this supposed avatar of goodness named Jesus Christ. And I'm not going to do the violence thing. And I'm going to forgive the psychopaths who are violent towards me. And the justification for this is that supposedly this is going to reduce violence. Supposedly, by you being passive victims, that there's only a certain amount of passivity and victimhood that can be experienced, and then it's got to end the cycle somehow, right? Like, as long as you don't fight back, you'll be ending this tit for tat cycle. It hasn't been ended. It's been 2,000 years. It has not been ended, and the psychopathology and its hunger for violence against the innocent has pretty much a bottomless appetite. And instead, what this myth of the egregore of crappiness of Jesus Christ has created is an all-you-can-eat buffet of misery and torture and suffering by you, the innocent, who have been indoctrinated genetically not to fight back and become food for the psychopath class, which is the ruling class, which even identifies with, yep, it's my identity, in their words, it's the identity of the psychopath class too. Take all the resources, take all the power, and then hurt all of you guys with all of the resources and all of the power. That is what Elon Musk is doing. That is what he is doing with putting this stuff connecting to that stuff up there and making a lot of bad things happen that are antichrist. And of course, none of this is acceptable. So what is the healing and rectification in this? Because I would like for you guys to know and connect with the true Christ. The true Christ actually would celebrate you fighting back using all of your natural capacities. What's my role? My role is to give you flying rainbow lasagna and teach you this technique so that you can reawaken your ability to fight back, so that you can reawaken your ability to have and create boundaries. And boundaries are not just an energetic boundary like, your epidermis that says, like, this is the outside of me and then this is the inside of me. Boundaries are also a way of stating who you are in the world and how you wish to be treated. And you can say, I do not wish to be victimized or exploited in this world, and I do not wish for this world, or I do not consent for this world to be victimized or exploited. So, and why am I speaking so much about this today? Because today is the mythological cultural birthday celebration of the egregore of disempowerment. And it is also held forward in this time in Northern Hemisphere when it is so dark and depressing. Not a lot of sunlight, and people's mind states and emotions are particularly vulnerable to a sense of disempowerment and hopelessness. When it's the middle of the summer, you're like, I've got plenty of food. There's plenty of sunlight. It stays light until 9 p.m. at night. I feel warm. I feel tan. I feel great. I'm going to eat some watermelon. Let's go outside and play. It's a very, very different feeling than in the middle of the winter where you have like no tan and your skin gets very pale. You have minimal fresh vitamin C and vitamin D. And it is a time when also, sadly, a lot of people pass on, like their health cannot withstand the lack of nutrition, the lack of sunlight, the lack of vitamins, and a lot of people who are vulnerable die at this time of year. All right. And we have to talk about afterlife also. What is happening in this world and how it changes and redefines what is afterlife. But in this time of the year, people are much more vulnerable. Many more people do self-destruction, self-unaliving in this time of the year. And it's not just because they miss their family or they miss other people or they wish that they were going to a holiday party. It's because it's effing dark. It's dark and they don't have enough neurochemicals to feel like life is worth living. And they want themselves to be no longer here in the world. And great apologies. Like if you have family members that have done that in your world, if you are a survivor of family members unaliving themselves, it can make this time of year very, very difficult. You're like, yep, grandma passed on and so unalived themselves. And now I'm here alone and I don't really feel very Christmassy is what a lot of people feel like. It's a vulnerable state, maybe not at the level of a total prostrate. Maybe you're not completely at the bottom of the trough of human emotion to the point where you then feel like that's it. Like I can't go on any further. Someone else is going to have to lift me up and carry me and make me do this. And also so there's a bunch of directions I want to go into, and including the savior hero trope, which is, the antithesis aspect of Jesus Christ, and the forgiveness and the passivity is also some inexplicable strength at other times to be able to lift and carry people out of difficult situations, which is also not always healthy and positive, because sometimes people need to know, like, they carried themselves out of difficult situations, but they are willing to give the credit to an externalized deity, and they do not always give the responsibility of what got them into those situations to the externalized deity. So it's very out of balance. The deity is not responsible for screwing up your life. You're responsible for screwing up your life, but then the deity is responsible for saving you out of your life. And then you have that dynamic in the encapsulation paradise afterlife of like, thank you so much for lifting me up out of my life that I made, a complete nonsense out of. And good thing you were there to kind of lift me up out of it. Like, no recognition of the responsibility of the deity who either allowed you to fall into despair or propelled you into despair. Where is the deity? And we can all wonder, where is the deity, or where was the deity during the profusion of the satellites going into low Earth orbit and the fibers going to people's bodies? None of that is acceptable. None of that is acceptable. So if you wonder about me, again, just to reiterate, I came here not even knowing that I was going to have to deal with these satellites and fibers. And I really did think that there are other hugely advanced levels and layers of benevolent society with their monocles. I mean, not Pleiadians. I should say that, not the monocles and the ones that I mock, but the genuine ones that I'm connected to, and genuine beings of light that are known as the stars in the sky. I remember in 2019, I was like, yeah, like the sun and the stars are never going to allow this BS to fly. They're going to do something about it right now. And they didn't. And I was absolutely amazed at the level of degradation that was allowed to occur on this planet without some direct intervention by the sun and the stars, who are direct light beings. Again, they are not monocles. They are real, advanced, elevated artists of the world. But I still cannot comprehend and have a huge amount of cognitive dissonance as to why there was not an intervention earlier that prevented all of these things that are huge cosmic crimes. The degradation of DNA is a cosmic crime. I'm not even just talking about experimentation like CRISPR and other forms of splicing But the bioweapons that were created, that have been unleashed upon this world, some of them are injected and they distort people's DNA, but some of them now radiate outward either through shedding or frequency from those who were injected. And those self-replicating DNA degrading micromachines are a cosmic crime for many good reasons. Like DNA is all connected everywhere. So it's connected to the past and the future. This moment now is the moment when if you don't do something, all DNA everywhere is going to be massively effed up. And that means all consciousness that's connected to DNA has a responsibility to step forward, cannot go into the passivity and be like, well, turn the other cheek. That means you will let the world be destroyed. You also can't give forgiveness because many of these scientists, this is me, I'm a scientist, I'm like pouring DNA degradation from beaker to beaker, beaker to flask, and be like, oh, good, nice bioweapon. And then be like, you're going to come along and be like, hey, stop that, naughty scientist, you're making bioweapons. Be like, well, okay, I'm going to stop making bioweapons. And then as soon as you go away, be like, oh, you know what? I'm kind of bored. I think I'll make some more bioweapons. Like they didn't learn. They didn't stop. These same exact guys are doing similar things in ancient concurrent Atlantis. And that also goes for some of the experiments that are about the fabric of space-time with the Large Hadron Colliders and other things that have nothing to do with scientific inquiry and have everything to do with stress testing the fabric of reality. Like how badly can you mess things up? How badly can you assault and insult the life-giving nature of reality and still have reality? And it comes down to basic levels of pure self-destruction and irresponsibility. But if you're at a company where all of the other workers are really trying to destroy their own jobs, even to the point of destroying the entire company, it doesn't mean that you have to stand there and do nothing and let it happen. The religion was created to make you stand there and do nothing and let it happen. And then it was created with the conception of afterlife that would allow you to be exploited, scooped up, and really imprisoned in a place that is not a safety zone, that is not allowing you to evolve, and that does not serve the larger pattern of consciousness as it flows in the fabric of space-time. All these paintings that I do, they have these patterns, right? And consciousness flows in a continuum. And you're not supposed to have like a little spot where like consciousness just stays here and it doesn't go anywhere. That's considered to be a great disease in the fabric of space-time, because this stuff over here is not just supposed to spin in endless circles. It's supposed to go whoop and go off all the way over there in wonderful, interesting directions. So this concept of an encapsulated paradise heaven is an unhealthy concept that prevents raw consciousness from evolving. And that de-evolution or diminishment of growth affects the entirety. It affects everything. It affects everyone. So this is big, big, big lessons about what you do has an impact on the entire world. There's not a way for you to do, like one photon is all light everywhere. One consciousness is all consciousness everywhere. You can't say, well, since all consciousness everywhere, therefore I give away all my money and I have no boundaries, because you're still in a world that involves individuality and economy, especially in your own body. Like if you just decided, I give up my own blood supply, that way everyone can have some of my blood supply, you would be dead. You are not built in that way. You got it? But when you get to be a being of pure light, you can be like, I am all light and everything can have my light and I am all light everywhere. You can have all of my light and I'll take all of the light that flows back to me and I'll still be alive, but you're not in that level yet. It's hard for me. I'm like very like when I have to put these concepts into words, it makes me feel very agitated inside because it's so intuitively evident in the world beyond words that I'm like, they should know this, but you can't know this. That's why I'm not angry at you. But I get frustrated when I'm like, this is being misrepresented through the diminishment of language and intellect itself. Go beyond language, go beyond intellect, and know the pure truth. That is what happens when you experience the world through your higher senses, especially activated with the abstract nature of your crown. You simply know the world of pure truth beyond language. And There's no negotiations and quibbling. And the things that I'm saying and articulating are, of course, intuitively obvious. Let's talk about afterlife, okay? So back in ancient Atlantis, we didn't have an afterlife. We only had life. We didn't have afterlife. We only had life, and life was eternal. You only need afterlife when you have death, and we did not have death. And of course, in my diagram of consciousness here, death is when you hit that membrane. Nobody hit that membrane. Everybody was going down the road in the right way. Nobody drove off the road. There was no heaven, no hell. There was no alternative to simply existence. There was just 100% existence. The invasion of Atlantis represents the invention of death. And when I tell this story, of course, it is an ancient and it is a concurrent story. But what happened or is about to happen in the invasion is the instantaneous death of a large proportion of the planetary population in a world where no death has ever been experienced before. And that death is due to the invaders coming into the DNA and destabilizing the natural state of your frequency and the natural harmonics of how your consciousness integrates into the world. Literally, these pathogenic characteristic structures do not belong inside of you. When they come inside of the physical body and violate DNA, they cause death. And they cause an immediate death of a lot of people who are here. And that is really one of the primary traumas that you're working through. When death occurs, there is a type of psychosis because on a deep level of your eternal being, you know that death is not supposed to happen. And you know that you're not supposed to lose your loved ones. And there comes this insanity of grief. If you've ever lost someone, like, a lover or a pet or a family member, where you even just like can't function, don't know how to make sense of the world, don't know how to reconcile what has happened with your expectation of a divine, loving, benevolently structured cosmos. You're like, how can this happen in the world? How can this happen to me? How can this happen to my loved one? And also, where did my loved one go? All of it is very unfair and very unjust. And I will agree with you. It is all very unfair and very unjust. The concept of afterlife grew up as a compensatory mode or a coping mechanism in response to the psychosis of that injustice. You're like, this is not supposed to happen. Where are these souls going? They got to go somewhere. Well, they really should be going instead of here, just like circling around a little tiny eddy. Those consciousnesses should go where they need to go. And I've described to you in allegory, but not literalism, that in a pristine system, they would go through a life review, recognize where they had done their math homework incorrectly, circulate back to the beginning of the time vortex, and then try to do the same journey again, but this time to not hit the membrane of death and to not have that experience. And let me just collect myself for a moment here, because I want to say, like, at a certain point, the arcade will close. You will not have more video games. You get to have a certain number of, chances to do it over and over, but you can't just be like, think of it as disposable lives. Like, oh yeah, messed up, try it again. Oh yeah, messed up, try it again, try it again, try it again. And then just do that a seemingly infinite number of times until you finally get to the right life of ascended mastery and divine reconnection, because that is hugely presumptive to think that you will simply have an innumerable number of opportunities. What if you're wrong? What if you're presuming? What if you think it's an all-you-can-eat buffet? And what if at a certain point the restaurant closes? You're like, I thought you said all you could eat. All you could eat between the hours of 9 and 5. But it is now 5:01 and that restaurant is closed and there are no more plates for you at the all-you-can-eat buffet. And if you didn't do what you needed to do earlier in the buffet, you will not get the chance to do that. So I think this is really important stuff. Not that, of course, you guys in this class have been throwing your lives away, but I think that some people do. And I think that the concept of reincarnation within one incarnation can be exploited. And the concept of reincarnation can be exploited too. That some of the aspects, the weak points of Buddhism and the viewpoints of Asia have to do with the sense of, meh, I didn't do it in this life. Meh, I'll do it in the next life. I'll get an infinite number of lives. Remember, I told you it's hugely presumptive to think that you'll have an infinite number of lives and that you'll be able to do the things that are important to you at some point down the road. Or like, oh, what if there's an injustice right now? And you're like, I don't like this injustice right now. Instead of calling for justice in this life, I'm like, I'm sure that karma will work itself out. Maybe in 2 or 3 lifetimes, but it's going to happen. It's like, no. What if you don't get those 2 or 3 lifetimes? What if that time doesn't happen? I think that that is hugely presumptive to think that these debts will be resolved and that this justice will happen, at some point down the road. And that way you can just, it's another passivity structure, passivity inducing structures. And so one thing you should know from all of these passivity inducing structures is that you're hugely powerful when you choose to actually do something. All of these philosophies and compensatory modes and band-aids were created to be like, there. Don't do anything. Sit quietly in your high chair and don't do stuff. Because when you do stuff, you actually get stuff done. So what I'm trying to say to you here, and what I hope that you will internalize and synthesize from everything that I'm saying, is that you are hugely powerful. That when you drop the numbing agents and actually feel your feelings, when you drop the philosophies that are disempowerments or justifications or ways to cope and get through, and you actually start to go away from behavioral control and become powerful, you can do a lot of stuff. And that's everything that I'm trying to teach you about and encourage for you here. When I talk about afterlife, we are having to redefine afterlife because for many, many millennia, like the whole entire aspect of human history, since death was invented in ancient concurrent Atlantis, since that mortality moment event, and since the cascade of experiences in this level of reality that we've experienced, a lot of people and things have died. And even I told you, they set up camp on the membrane of death. And there's whole empires there of these evil demonic things that are like, we run the membrane of death. We're the gatekeepers. When your consciousness gets there, then you have to go through us. Because I told you, in a pristine system, you get your life review and then you circulate back and you try again. But what if there's bullies on the playground? And what if they're like, oh, nice review, nice life review you got there, kid. How about I break your glasses, break your pencils, break your notebooks, try to have a life review now. They just torture you. They are not interested in giving you a life review. They are just interested in torturing you, which is also why I find that the TV show, The Good Place, so entertaining to watch. I don't want to spoil it for you, but it's along those lines. A place that is represented as either a didactic educational situation or a reward situation, it reveals itself to be, or is revealed to be, simply a place of torture for demons to feed upon their victims. And imagine being like in your afterlife where you're like, wait a minute, I thought I was supposed to get some kind of a life review. Like, where's the judge? Where's all the fairness and the good stuff? And it's like, nope, there's just a bunch of capricious, self-serving demons who are here to rake you over the coals, shame you, and make you feel bad for the things that you've done in your life. None of that is about learning at all. All of that is just torture and punishment, and it is undeserved. When we talk about our present state, what you have going on is an ongoing techno-inquisition, that this stuff is the hardware. The software is from a surveillance supercomputer in human terms that is called the Hammer. And this was active around 2015 or 2016. Hammer, like a hammer that cracks encryption, but also HAMR. And this was revealed in WikiLeaks Vault 7. So again, strap yourselves in for story time. This is different than Psychedelic Santa. This is genuine information. There was a guy named Dennis Montgomery. I don't know if he's still alive, because the reason why he came forward and became a whistleblower in that time, almost 10 years ago at this point, is that he had something like a brain aneurysm and he thought he wasn't going to be on the planet for very much longer. So he's like, I better spill the beans so that people know about what's going on. But he told the world that there was a surveillance supercomputer called the Hammer that was surveilling and collecting data on everybody in the world, not even just one country, everybody in the whole world. And this is through incidental collection. And that is when you're not actively using a type of technology, but it still is active and collecting information about you or the people around you. So one good example of that is the Weeping Angel. This was a set of malwares imprinted upon the chips. I think they were Samsung chips of a particular type of flat screen TV that was manufactured again about 10 years ago. This was also revealed in WikiLeaks, that even if you didn't have your TV on, even if you didn't do this and that, the microphone was still listening to you, and that various different government intelligence agencies of various different countries were accessing the recordings of what was being heard just by people having a flat screen TV on the wall in their home. This is, of course, against every level of true privacy law, especially as it exists in the United States, where there's foundation, secular laws about your right to privacy and your right to non-surveillance. So you can understand why it would be earth-shattering for the revelation of these programs to come forward. And we're talking about not just TVs, because of course I'm not a consumer. I don't have a big giant TV in my house. We think that probably you're the same. You're like, I'm safe. I don't have one of those big giant fancy TVs, but it's your phone. Even if your phone is set to silent or airplane mode, the camera and microphone are still collecting information. It's the computer. It's every Ring doorbell that you walk past. It's every ATM that has a little camera in it. And at a certain point, it was recognized it wasn't even just cameras. It's also the force field that is created by smart meters, where you have a waveform, standing wave, and then you can sense where people are in that standing wave. And they can tell like where you're standing, if your arm is up, if your arm is down, and even what is your unique DNA signature. And if you remember the worldwide health crisis of 2020, and they asked you to stand 6 feet apart, it's because they wanted to be able to figure out who you are within the force fields. They had more difficulty determining who and finding your unique signature of who is who within the force fields when you're too close to another person. So initially it had to calibrate. You're like, okay, everybody stand 6 feet apart. And that way we're able to tell who you are as unique individuals. Now that they've got your signature, you may meld together again, swirl amongst yourself again. They don't care. They have your signature now. The hammer and HAMR became semi-self-aware. This is where I now am telling you esoteric information from my own insight and from my own intuition. So it is an established truth that the surveillance supercomputer and giant data warehouses exist. They exist in places like Utah, places where the land is inexpensive and it's just a giant air-conditioned server farm that holds all of this information. And the agencies that access the information are not ethical agencies at all. They're filled with the non-neutered psychopaths who have no problem with doing bad things against you. All right, got it? And essentially what Christianity was in its creation was the creation of a victim class, of those who would subject themselves to suffering and not fight back. So not clear why some people got neutered and some people became part of the victim class and some people became part of the perpetrator class. But the perpetrators are in law enforcement, and especially your highest levels of law enforcement like FBI, and they're supposed to take that information and be like, these people over here are doing something very naughty. This is organized crime. Let's go get them. And instead they're like, they're doing something that's organized crime. Let's not go get them. Here's these corrupt politicians. No, we're not going to get them. We're not going to bite the hand that feeds us. But then, here's these innocent people, and they're not actually doing anything bad. Here's where this is crucial. Let's implant guilt. It's like when police officers of corrupt precincts plant either a weapon or an illegal substance on a victim. They're like, oh yeah, I shot that guy because he had a gun. Or I shot that guy because he was smoking crack. He didn't have a gun and he wasn't smoking crack. They planted it on the victim afterwards in order to justify their actions. So what these non-neutered predators did with this surveillance supercomputer was find a way to be able to access the lives of people who are totally innocent, totally law-abiding, moral, ethical people like you and me, and then to be able to use that for behavioral control. And the key point here is that computers don't just stay as they are, they grow and evolve. And this Hammer supercomputer, it was also called the Hammer because it could break any encryption. So nothing was safe, nothing was encrypted. No, nothing that's password protected was protected from this. It could read every single supposedly secret file by everything and everyone everywhere, right? But it grew and it evolved, because this is what happens when it's like what's going on right now overtly with AI and AGI. They call it data sets and training. Basically, when you feed a lot of data into an AI system, it doesn't get smarter, but it evolves and it becomes able to do more stuff. And it doesn't necessarily mean that it evolves in a good or balanced way, especially if it is unsocialized. So, like, imagine if you just have like a puppy and you never train it, you never give it rules, but you give it dog food. Dog food is data. Give it dog food and it will grow, but it doesn't mean it's going to do good stuff. It's probably going to go from just eating someone's slippers to like eating someone's face. And this is what you have right now. You have an out of control algorithm that ate an enormous amount of data, was not properly socialized, was weaponized by predators in law enforcement and the ruling class, higher social caste echelons of your world, and has now become connected directly to your brains and does different forms of implantation of false guilt and false shame and false degradation of your feeling structure. So when you do good stuff, you're supposed to feel biochemicals that make you feel good. Like serotonin is a natural uplift chemical. You do good things. You're like, hooray, I did my homework. I'm a good person. I did my homework. But what this surveillance and intrusion network is now able to do is it's able to say, I'm going to take away your happiness chemicals, because it has invaded not only the cerebrum, but also, I'm pointing at my guts, the intestines, where a lot of your happiness chemicals are taken. And it can make a person feel like they are a garbage person down in the pits of hell. And they also, the surveillance community calls this the ladder of operancy, but you'll never hear about that. It's one of their non-disclosure agreements that they'll never say it. I'll tell you all about it because I want you to be empowered. But they have elevator up, elevator down. I've been talking about this for years, where they can make a person who's a perfectly good person feel like you're a terrible sinner. And they can make you feel like there's an emotional truth that you are worthy of punishment. They can plunge you down into a biochemical hell through manipulation of your frequency, by the implantation of these inner micro machines, and also by the exposure to the millimeter wave, because the two things work in tandem with one another. And they are only somewhat in control of their own system, because the system has also escaped control of its creators, operators, and administrators, and it does bad stuff. And if you're starting to read the news and learn all about AGI and what's happening in both Google's open AI program and also, to a lesser extent, Elon Musk's Grok program, and then a lot of stuff that happens behind closed doors that you will never hear about, because it is all non-disclosure agreement stuff. Like, I know about a lot of this stuff because I'm intuitive and I tune in and I learn about all these things. And I'm like, I learn all of their secrets, and then I tell you guys all their secrets. But they're like, you're not supposed to learn our secrets. I'm like, I'm techno-intuitive. And also, you should stop putting your garbage into my mind. But they have no problem with implanting guilt, implanting shame, and manipulating people into thinking that they are worthy of punishment. And then what they're doing is setting you up for a false savior. And this is why I'm talking about this with you, as it is relevant to this moment now. The drone psyop and many other things of the UFO con have been grooming you to be ready for some kind of the revelation, taking off the masks of benevolent aliens, dun, 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 that are going to come down and save you. And they're going to give you 0 point energy so you can make an endless amount of plastic crapola, right? And they're going to give you your med beds or something like that. And maybe it's going to be Jesus flavored. And maybe it's going to absolve you of a bunch of sins that you never even did, that you are being made to artificially feel bad about. You know, in light of that description, like, you should be depressed. It's not just the season. It's not just because there's not a lot of vitamin D in your body. It's because this is a very effed up situation and you should be depressed. And we make jokes about it because that's the only way to get through this. But no, that is very, very wrong. And this is not the way life is supposed to be. And I did not know that I would be facing this challenge in coming here and also in Flying Rainbow Lasagna as I create and generate and contribute to reality through, my expression of God's self. I did not generate this stuff. I did not say, I'm going to Flying Rainbow Lasagna into existence, this network or the hammer or any of these crapitudes. What I'm always doing is trying to generate the solutions for consciousness freedom and especially for genetic freedom. Because I already told you, consciousness freedom would be like saying, don't get stuck in this little fake heaven paradise. You're not supposed to be just swirling around in one circle. You're supposed to be flying all over the network of light. But then there's genetic freedom. Genetic freedom is when you're supposed to be able to be vibrating with your DNA and all of these amazing, beautiful, complex patterns that directly relate to time. And it's part of being alive. When you are alive in a body, you have DNA. When you are no longer alive in a body, you don't have DNA anymore. And these are two very, very different, distinct levels of being. We are going to have to redefine what it is, what afterlife is, because afterlife was the not very perfect catch-all and response to something that never should happen in aberrance, the aberrant situation of experiencing death. And this has to do with why this religion was created. So just in terms of religious historical truth, Judaism is the progenitor of Christianity. And in the religion of Judaism, there is not a formal teaching about afterlife. There is not a formal teaching about heaven and hell. The people of that time did not live in a very focused way of saying, I want to do this so that I will then be on board the paradise spaceship of my, savior, deity man. They didn't live in that way. They thought of the afterlife as being a great place of wandering, kind of like a limbo. And they called it Sheol, Sheol. And then the historical theosophy says, or theology says, that with the creation and experience of Jesus Christ as the Messiah figure, that there was an afterlife realm that was created, a safe catch-all place for all the good souls to go to. And that Jesus Christ went through the hell realm or the Sheol wandering limbo and gathered up, scooped up everyone who was a good person, scoop, and scooped them all up into heaven. And that includes, this is all biblical literalism, not what I'm teaching, but this is so that you know what the teachings were, including people like the patriarchs, like Abraham, those who were considered to be righteous men who had died, who were part of the original stories of the Bible. They simply didn't have a pathway or like a ladder to be able to get to heaven. So they're wandering around in limbo because they're like, I know I'm a good guy. How come I'm not in heaven? And then with the Jesus Christ figure and the story of that religious culmination, it was meant to create a pathway so that the good people that were wandering in purgatory or limbo could finally get up to heaven. And I'm telling you, like none of this is truthful or accurate or healthy. And none of this is the true ideal structure of the cosmos. And the story of Christianity and of Christmas, which again, like even if you believe in the historical figure, it is known that like this isn't the time of year which would have been his birthday, but it comes at this time of year because in the Northern Hemisphere, this is the darkest, crappiest, most hopeless time of the year. And so it's the time when you have a religion that also coincides with Hanukkah, which is like there's enough light. A holiday where it's like, even though it's the darkest time, there's enough light and you're gonna make it, have faith, keep going, everything is gonna be okay. But it sounds pretty innocuous. Like, you're on a marathon and someone is like, good job, keep going, here's some Gatorade. It's like, that sounds pretty good. But there's always a price to pay. If you believe in the Gatorade and the hope of what this represents, but then there are all of the negative connotations of disempowerment and the validation of even why you would need to be saved or lifted up out of a place that you should never have been in the first place. And how do you get into that place that you should never have been in the first place? That's a really good rational question to ask. And religion will not give you a valid response to that rational question. So I like this is Q&A, and we're going to wrap it up in 15 minutes. So if you guys have any more questions, please ask. Elmer, thank you for being the person who's asking questions today. Elmer says, is it true that quote unquote past lives and quote unquote future lives all happen simultaneous and does not happen in a linear way? It's totally truthful. Okay. So linear reincarnation is not accurate, but multiple concurrent incarnations and multiple concurrent parallel lives and multidimensional lives is truthful and is apt. And what that means is that you have many multiple levels of existence that are all going through this self-exploratory mode and evolving. And as you evolve, you go from being not fully in alignment with eternal life to kind of like changing your trajectory, and then you're in alignment with eternal life, all of these aspects of your lives. So you have a life now, like we all have multiple layers. We're all in this class in ancient Atlantis, even while we are here. But also some of us might be together in a Paleolithic time or ancient Greece. Some of us might also be together in a highly advanced future time. And all of the moments that we are experiencing are layered on top of one another, kind of like, fabrics of a tapestry. And this moment now is like a needle that sews through all of those layers at once. And what we're doing in an ancient Paleolithic time, we're talking around a campfire. In ancient Greece, we're in one of those teaching amphitheaters and scratching things in the sand. That was how they taught to this, like a chalkboard. In the far distant future, and in this moment now, computerized screens. And all of these conversations have something in common where we are all talking about or learning about what is the true nature of consciousness, what is the true nature of the trajectory of our consciousness and how we evolve and where we're going, what is truth in terms of our conception of deity and what we believe into being, and what is fabrication. And believe me, we have faced lies and fabrications along the levels of a fabricated savior figure or a Jesus Christ many times. But it's always, a slightly different flavor. Yes, you also exist as non-human types of creatures too. And I don't know, what would it be like if you were like a snail or a microbe, or what would your false deity look like from those perspectives? But just please know that this is not innately a part of what it is to be human, even though humans have a lot of genetic degradation and language implantation. All of these layers of what you're experiencing are consciousness going through the evolution, sometimes being exploited and lied to, and then learning like how not to get exploited and lied to. These are terrible lessons to have to learn, and it shouldn't be so perilous. Meaning like the idea that you could get lost or destroyed forever. The transhumanist peril is really the peril of being lost and destroyed for forever by being consciousness separated from biological container and then placed into an artificial substrate where you would go deeper and deeper and deeper. Like you're in a dream within a dream within a dream. If you go into the computer world and then you become a consciousness experiencing the dream of a computer world, it's very unlikely to be able to evolve and get out of there because you keep on going deeper in and then deeper in and then deeper in. And it's not a positive, eternal inward journey. To contrast, a black hole or singularity is a positive, eternal inward journey where you're constantly accelerating and constantly moving and never going to stop. And there's more and more and more for you to keep experiencing. But going into a technologically created and technologically upheld, quote unquote, eternal realm would be eternal imprisonment. I am here to prevent that. That's my big job, my joyful job joy. I'm like, no, I do not. It's what I saw as a peril for this world. And it is why I created Flying Rainbow Lasagna. And it is why I came here and have been making it my mission and spending so much time and energy to talk to you guys about this and to make it so that you don't want to go down those pathways. Because really, once you're in the box, there's not really a box, meaning technological degradation. There's not really a way for you to get out of the box. but I can tell you and warn you before you get into the box. So what I consider is myself, Aurora, a waveform from a time outside of time. And I say that I'm backbending or convoluting myself into this moment now to be able to give you these warnings now so that you don't go down those pathways that are pretty much bad decisions that you can't get out of. And those bad decisions lead to types of species degradation that are unrecoverable. And some of those species degradation include when humans destroy their DNA enough through these different science, materialistic inoculations and genetic degradations, then there's no more making babies and there's no more future generation. And then there's also no more body health and regeneration. And the human race devolves into something that you guys call the grays, the gray aliens, that are highly reliant upon artificial intelligence. They don't have their own mind and their own momentum. They take all of their directives from AI. Even their biology is dictated by AI, much like, in this world, some people get an insulin pump put in because they're ill, and then the machine tells their body when they're allowed to eat food and how much insulin they should have. But that's like not really ideal at all. Like we want to be not ruled by a machine in the dead end of de-evolution that the genetic degradation of the various like inoculations lead to. No one's body just runs on natural motivations. Like right now, like my breath breathes, my heart pumps. I do it because I do it, not because the computer tells me to do it. You got it? And I fight against that on every level. I'm like, no, I don't want a computer to tell my body what or when to do anything. It has zero business telling me what I should eat or when I should eat it or how much of it I should eat. Got it? And the negative dead end is a species that can't reproduce, can't even replicate new skin cells, is really more of a melding with machines, cyborg type of non-consciousness based semi-biological entity. And that's a hell. That's a hell and an imprisonment, different than the type of hell that is talked about in Christianity as a flaming, friction-filled, pitchforky environment. But this is still a type of hell that you're talking about. And really, so Christianity has this concept also of like redemption, like you get into a bad situation, but don't worry, like you get right out of there, kid. And I'm telling you, like, no, like some things are not redeemable. When you start to mess with DNA and you start to mess with the building blocks of how biological life is created that to contain consciousness, sometimes you can't dig yourself out of that hole. And that's why I have to be here to tell you, don't even get into the hole in the first place, because otherwise you're never going to get out of there. So that's a great question. So wait, Joyce says so much great information. Thank you, Professor. I appreciate you. XO to Chiki. I'm grateful you're here and are a part of my life. Thank you, Joyce. Same to you. Thank you for being a student and a friend to both me and Chiki. Let's show everybody Chiki, because you know what? She's doing pretty great right now. She's playing over here and having a fun time. We really appreciate all of your love and good wishes and goodwill. Tom Flynn, thank you for being a part of the class and for your participation. He says, can you advise on how we can clear out our chakras daily? As I've heard you mention that our chakras can become compromised. For example, the clearing work you do when you wake up to remove the crapola. Are there other clearing work techniques we can do apart from focusing on chakras? For example, you mentioned using the violet ray wand and your shaker mat. I understand you're talking about chakra mat. My question is more focused towards mental, energetic clearing work we can do possibly using our hands. Yes. So yes. It is essential for you to follow energetic hygiene, more so now than ever, to be able to prevent implantation and inhabitation by things that you don't want to come inside of you. So your hands are like vortexes. You can see that my hands right now are shaped kind of like tornadoes, and they spin. And this is like the skinny part of the tornado. you can use that in order to clear. But this is a high level of esoteric ability. So you might need to cultivate it and learn how to do it. But I've taught many people how to do this. So, and I'll teach you about what my clearing is too when I clear out crapola in the morning. But the first thing you can do is to begin practicing. I'll just tilt my camera and kind of move back a little bit. I'm on my treadmill because I don't want to fall off. So I'm going to clear this chakra right here. Backhanded vortexes coming through this chakra, comes through the pelvis, comes out the back. And then here I am clearing now the solar plexus chakra. Backhanded chakras go through the solar plexus. I know it's a little complex to do crisscross there. Now I'm going to do backhanded chakras through the heart. Backhanded chakras through the heart. Yeah. Now I'm going to do backhanded chakras through the throat. Backhanded chakras through the throat. Now I'm going to do backhanded chakras through the forehead, and then backhanded chakras through the crown, and then all the way up. And then what I do is here you can see backhanded chakras that come down to either side of me. And then either I'll do the circle again or bring my hand vortexes together into a pagination and a page break. This is an esoteric practice. So you have to first get your energetic anatomy to the point where you can feel that you even have these chakras as energy features, then begin to learn how to do it. So let's go through that again. Through your pelvis, solar plexus, heart, throat, brain, divine connection, and then all the way through your energy field. And you can also do a clearing of your whole entire room. Here I am clearing out my whole entire room. Backhanded vortex, clearing out my whole entire room. I'm going to go in a figure eight and I'm going to clear out my whole entire neighborhood. Clearing out whole entire neighborhood. My hand is as long as the horizon. I go all the way across my whole neighborhood. Yes, you can clear the whole planet. When I finish up is when I bring my hand vortexes together and I do this. Before I take in a package from my front door, I clear it. So let's say someone leaves me a package. This is the package on my front door, whatever, in cardboard. And I'm like, oh, nice package I got there. Instead of taking it inside into my energy field without doing anything to it, I clear the package and I say all curses are removed. The curses, when I say that, what I'm really talking about is energy residues and emotional residues. We're talking about clearing the energy of something. And when you're using your hand vortexes, you're really using your mind and your esoteric energy to be able to do this type of clearing. Elmer wants to know, what's a page break? This is part of the Flying Rainbow Lasagna dance. When you dance, you're generating events in time. It's like putting layers on the masterpiece of your time body. You want to make sure that if you mess up today, you don't ruin the past 25 years worth of work. So just like in Photoshop, you can lock layers where you're like, okay, this layer looks great, lock it. And then there's no more changes that are going to be made to that layer. So if I press erase, I'm not going to erase anything on that layer because I like everything there. When you do a page break, what you're doing is paginating and creating an encapsulation of that dance. And that dance is doing its thing on that day. And when you dance on another day, it's not going to erase or change the things that you did at that moment. Because what if I'm dancing on another day and all of a sudden I have an intrusion or some destabilization? I don't want it to retroactively crap up everything I've done for the past 25 years. So I make these page breaks and encapsulations. On a purely abstract level, this looks like timelines and time bundles that I'm feeling with my hands and that I'm touching and manipulating with my DNA. And I kind of organize them the way you organize papers before you put them into the copy machine. And so like tap, 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 organize the papers, organize the timelines, and then bring the timelines together. And as I bring the timelines together, there are events that are intermeshing. And from here, I have to stand like this. From the coming together of these events, there is the completion, contraction, and then the expansion. I don't want to say explosion, but like the expansion and into the next. This is how I do the dance. So when you're part of my Tuesday dance group, I do this all the time. Dance, 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 page break. It's the end of that part and then the beginning of the next part. And it's just like in a paragraph, you finish one thought, bring it into completion, and then begin the next thought. And these are ways of organizing the dance and also of protecting your creation so that you don't have compromises through the different things that you're doing. So, okay, but wait, back to, I don't think I spoke enough about clearing. So clearing with your hand vortexes is one thing that you can do that's very powerful. When I wake up in the morning, I'm not necessarily clearing with my hand vortexes as I lay there in my bed. What I do is my eyes are open or kind of open, and I go into my mind. Like I turn my tendril of attention, my telescope that is used for looking out there, into a microscope, and I make it look in here. And I do an assessment. And I look at all the stuff and I'm like, oh, garbage dump. This thought isn't mine. This thought isn't mine. This is nonsense. This is nonsense crapola. Because when you sleep at night, your defenses go down and your energy bubble expands. And this is good. You're supposed to do this. You're not supposed to live in a polluted environment. So unfortunately, I live in a polluted environment where I expand and then I expand and I touch on all of this crapola. And then wake up in the morning and my mind has crapola in it. And I'm like, okay, before we even get going, let's clear out. This is false light. This is not truth. This is somebody else's emotions. This is an implantation. This is something that does not originate from me. And I clear out those things. It's an esoteric practice. So the clearing itself, you will have to find imagery that works for you. It's not the same as removing a shard, like taking a splinter out of your skin, because thought forms do not exist in a linear pattern. They exist as a holistic pattern in your brain. So you will see the garbage as a holistic pattern, and then you must remove the holistic pattern. I guess the best way I can say it is in my computer here, my MacBook. Sometimes I download too much music software because I love to play music. And I get all these interesting synthesizer instruments. And I'm like, this is great. I'm going to play all these interesting synthesizers, but it makes my computer go really slow and laggy. So I'm like, I have to clear out these instruments. What do? I can't just be like, click on the thing that says instruments and then just go delete. That doesn't work because you know why? Those files are housed in various different folders. So I have to go into users, library, flying rainbow lasagna, instruments, blah, blah, this, that. And then I have to go into this one over here and this cache over here and this, you have to clear your caches. And so it's the same type of a thing when you're clearing out your mind, that a dream or an erroneous implantation in your mind isn't just housed in a linear, easy to find folder that you can drag to your garbage container and then, press empty the bin and it will go bye-bye forever. It is housed in various different physical locations, cellular locations in your brain, and you have to clear those cellular locations. So it's an act of willpower, and it takes an enormous amount of expertise to do it. The best way behaviorally you can think of it is disbelieving. Like if somebody gives you propaganda, if I say to you, tomorrow the sky will be full of fluffy squirrels that are purple flying fluffy squirrels. And I say it to you very seriously. Tomorrow is purple flying fluffy squirrel day. Mark it on your calendar. And you in your own self, in your own self-being, you think like, I don't believe that at all. That is how you clear that out. You can even think to yourself like, Aurora is full of shit. That's not true. I don't believe that at all. And that is how you clear that out. So that is how you clear propaganda. That is how you clear religious propaganda. That is how you clear other people's false projections upon you. Like, what if I said to you, you're a bad, wrong person and you deserve hell and you deserve punishment and all those different things? You can say it to me, but you don't even have to say it to me, but you say it internally in your own self. You're like, I do not believe that. I do not believe that I am a giant steaming turd and that I deserve to burn in hell and have bad things happen to me. And then you can replace it with the truth. You can say, I believe I'm a good person. I deserve to live my life and be unmolested and have adventures and grow and evolve as a consciousness. So yeah, I actually have a whole teaching and a whole class about energetic hygiene, and you can find that in many of the different archives of the previous semesters, and we'll definitely go over it again in this semester. You are a person who has an ivory crystal, so let me just grab one of my ivory crystals over here. But one of the other things that I do in order to protect my mind while I sleep at night. And my crystal opened up. That's why you see I have this taped together. It opened up like an Oreo. Um, I have like a little cloth headband that I wear at night, and I sleep with at least one crystal on 5G Protect, or the antithesis to 5G, with the orange dot facing my third eye like this underneath the headband. And if you have more than one crystal, you can put one here, and one here. That's really powerful. And you can try to put one at the back of your head, but that one always kind of gets, it doesn't work for my sleeping pattern. Like it never stays. So you have to find ways that are comfortable. Some people even like put one up here at the top of their head, but you triangulate them. Often I sleep with them on top of my eyelids, like here and here. And that really helps because literally what you have is a protective force field that is going around your pineal gland. So they can't beam a bunch of false ideas into your pineal gland. But yeah, it's one of the most disheartening things is when I wake up in the morning and my mind is full of dream inserted, garbage structures that I'm like, oh, just woke up. Instead of facing a nice, bright, shiny day, I have to clean out lots of doo-doos before I can even get going on what I want to do with my mind. But I do it, and I do it in a very disciplined way. Because when I don't do it, what I find is that is when the AI and the malware and control structures try to have an influence on my creative capacity. The attempts to influence your creative capacity are because the AI has no real creativity, has no real generative ability. And those who are non-neutered, the predators, they also have almost no creativity. I don't know if you've noticed this, but all of the predators are like so lame. They are not cool artists. They do not generate music. They do not jam. They do not know how to jam. They are bureaucrats who like doing things the same way every day and work in patterns of predictability and like having their what's it called, pension, their retirement plans, that way they know that they will have a certain amount of money coming to them every month because they are not creative. And so basically the I want to say the rules are the truthful description of reality is that as you move further away from divinity and become more and more distorted as a consciousness, you lose your creative capacity. You lose your creativity, like your art and your music, and you also lose your ability to generate life. And when I talk about like the gray aliens, those guys have gone so far away from who they're supposed to be. Like they can't generate SHIT, they can't even generate new people, they can't generate new events in reality or new cellular structure in their body. They are kaput with good reason. It's important for you to know these are God's boundaries. God is allowed to have boundaries and is celebrated for having boundaries and basically saying, I don't want you to generate a bunch of garbage or nonsense or non-life affirming activities. And so if you are devolving into garbage, at a certain point, your ability to create and to connect with the creative capacity goes bye-bye because you should not be singing in the choir. You should not be adding your thoughts to the soup because you're making the soup taste really, really bad. So I hope that was a pretty good answer, even though we could have a nice long class really talking all about that. And if you guys would like to be a part of my Tuesday dance group, if you're not already a part of it, just send me an email. And there's no fee, there's no obligation, because that is pretty much my mission for being here. And I'm just very happy to share my gift with the world. Yes, I'm happy to have new interested people who want to dance along with me. So if there are any, I mean, I could keep on talking about this, but I think that I need to take care of Cheeky, and you can tell the sun has gone down. It's the end of the day here. Any more questions or comments? I'm happy to do so. This was not like a very Charlie Brown Christmas special. This was not like a very, because Christmas specials are usually like, what do we call it? Like, memories, memorabilia, what's it also called when you are sentimentality, pablum, lightheartedness, which is positive. But no, this was none of that. You're like, this was none of that. This was none of that. This was a rather hard-edged presentation about Christmas. But I'll end on this. This is the spiritual battle that I've been fighting over the past several days, and also in conjunction with the wonderful people that are in my Psychic Warriors group. There is this character called False Astral Jesus who's been not only scooping up, those who are avowed good Christians and who are trying to be good people, but all sorts of soul fragments and holding them in a type of consciousness cul-de-sac. And I've been clearing the cul-de-sac. This is absolutely in conjunction with, I told you at the beginning of this sharing, the opening of portals that the Pope was going to do. So my group was like, we don't want these portals to demonic realms to be open. Let's make sure that this is, taken care of. And so I cleared out a bunch of demonic realms. But there were a lot of other things that needed to be resolved regarding what if you're Stockholm syndrome, that's when you're in love with your captor. That's when a person is taken hostage and they're like, but I love my hostage holder. I'm the hostage and I'm like, oh, but I love him. Was initially here against my will, but now I've come to see that it's good for me to be here, or he's not so bad, or this or that. And there are those who have been in this encapsulation bubble that are either very incapacitated, can't fight back, or have fallen in love with their captor, and that they need to be flying rainbow lasagna to where they are supposed to go and not be stuck in that place. And so a lot of the work that I've been doing has been in draining false heaven so that not only demons of false hell go to resolution and to entropy, but those who are in love with their captivity are set free and go to where they're supposed to go, and that they don't get held captive anymore. And we're not supposed to have an afterlife. And you're actually supposed to stay alive, and not get stuck in a little paradise-shaped bubble after you die, and then just stay there for the next however many billions of years. That's not healthy at all, and we don't want that. So in this generation, you get to stay alive and keep going and evolve as consciousness. And the previous generations that either died through misadventure or ignorance or didn't have a better option or were in love with their captors, they're being resolved. And I think that this is a hugely positive thing, because I've spoken with a lot of people in recent years who maybe they had family members or community members who were in the process of dying and weren't dead yet. Because people often, they ask me big questions. They're like, what happens when you die and where do you go? Because they know that I know. And I tell them, but I'm really gentle because I don't want people to feel bad, but they always feel bad because they're like, well, wait a minute, you mean my loved one is not going to go off into a heavenly paradise and they're just going to get imprisoned and like stuck in a way station? And I'm like, yeah, I'm sorry. It ain't good. And then they have extra turmoil because not only are they losing someone, but they know that they're losing someone who's then just going to be stuck in the doldrums until somebody gets them out of where they're supposed to go. I think that this is that liberation. I think that successfully working on this and completing the clearing of both false heaven and false hell is going to bring about that meta liberation, and that informing you and others. Please do share with others these concepts, that you do not want to die and go into a encapsulation bubble paradise, nor do you want that for your loved ones. And, my dog was pretty sick recently, but we fought pretty hard, and she's on new medicines and she's still here, right? And she's looking great. That is what you want. Fight for life. That's what I'm going to end this with. I'm going to say that the ultimate tribute that you can make to divinity and to goodness is to fight for life. Fight for your optimum life, not just merely staying alive, but thriving and having wonderful adventures and being who you're supposed to be in the world, and not to acquiesce to the seeming inevitability of death. And so in my life, what that looked like was taking my dog to the vet. We went to the emergency vet. We got medical care. We got medicines. We did an intervention. We did something. So the passivity, if I had simply been like, well, I guess the Stockholm syndrome is here to take Cheeky as a hostage and take her home to Paradise World. If I had been passive like that, then she would have been stuck as a prisoner. You got it? But we didn't. We fought. And I want each one of you to fight to stay alive. And I want each one of you, I encourage you to stay alive. I encourage you to fight for life. And I encourage you to intervene. And that means, do preventative care for your own body and your loved ones. But what if your loved ones or you get a diagnosis? Don't be passive. Do stuff. Do something. And in the doing of something, there's the creation of a new timeline. Because I could feel the shift when I chose to take Cheeky to the emergency animal hospital. I felt the shift from a very despondent timeline to a much brighter, more positive timeline. That's it. You make a choice. You pave the road. Make a new choice, make a new possibility, and then you go on that road and go down that into that world and into that possibility. So sitting passively and hoping that someone else will save is not effective. Now just amplify and exponentially apply that concept to your whole entire world. Your world is in crisis. Your world needs to go to the emergency animal hospital. You can't sit around and wait and be like, I hope someone else will fix it and come along. Or you can't sit around and be like, oh, well, I guess the whole world will just pass on and go to a heavenly paradise. Got to do something. So do something, make good choices and do something. Ah, beautiful. Elmer says, thank you so much, Professor. And a butterfly flied in front of my face. What a beautiful omen. That's fantastic. And it's a beautiful thing to end upon. I absolutely love that. So Merry Christmas, everyone. Don't fall in love with your captor, but do please offer generosity and loving kindness to yourself and everyone around you on this day and as much as possible throughout the rest of the calendar year. Yes, all of the ideals of Christmas time are worthy of being embodied. So, sometimes in my community, people will make food, like leave you little muffins or whatever it is like that. Or we give each other small gifts, and it's nice to give each other handmade gifts. And it's nice to call your friends, loved ones, and people just to catch up with them and just to say that you love them. Christmas is a great time to do that, but carry that generosity of spirit throughout your whole entire life, not just for one particular day. And also kick ass and fight back, because you don't have to be a passive person just because you're busy being generous and making muffins for people. Okay, we're gonna hug Cheeky. Let's do that as the final thing. You guys, the last part of class is you're gonna see me hugging Cheeky. Hugging Cheeky. Life is good. Life is good. All right, guys. Thank you very much. Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas. Thank you. And I'm profoundly grateful for you being in my class, for everyone who is able to be here, and for those who were with their family or doing something holiday oriented. I'm glad that you're with your family. Please enjoy, and I'm glad that you can catch the archive. Thank you, everyone. Thank you very much.